This readathon is sponsored by the University of Maryland Libraries, and we're glad to be with you. I'm Aaron Wilson, and I'm joined with my fellow members of the IDEA Committee, and I will be joined in co-moderating this with Ms. Antonia Huntsberg da Silva. Antonia, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
We would like to say a thank you to those who have been a part of the planning of this readathon, the members of the IDEA Committee of the University Libraries. We thank them for their support and their contributions to this program. We also would like to express our gratitude to the several members of the Library Fellows Program who have assisted us in making their contributions of materials for those who are interested in reading to be a part of it. Individuals, Jacob Hopkins, Gina Godley, Miyako Palazzo, as well as Jasmine Thomas, and we thank them for their contributions, as well as Ms. Susie Wilson, who helps with the fellowship program here in the University Libraries, for their work in putting together some of these online resources that are available for those who are doing the reading. Antonia, anything that you would like to add?
Thank you to all of the librarians, especially some of the subject specialists that signed up, for some of our last minute fills, and thank you to the committee.
Wonderful. We do have here on live one of our new members of our committee, Anika Chisholm Edwards, and I would invite her to say a few words if you would like.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anika Chisholm. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Officer for the libraries, and I'm really excited to invite everyone to sit back and listen and enjoy all of the wonderful scholars and writers and thinkers that we're going to be highlighting today. We let everyone pretty much choose a piece that means something to them or has a message that they really want to put forward. And we really are interested in hearing what you think. If you want to kind of contribute by messaging in chat boards or going to University of Maryland Libraries, our socials. I believe we'll put that kind of information in the chat, so how you can reach us via on our YouTube page. And then we have, I believe we have Twitter. And so I'm really excited for that. So we definitely look forward to your contributions and participation. You can kind of sit back and listen. You can share this link with your social networks, with your friends, with colleagues, because it really is going to be just a rich compilation of different works that everyone has really compiled together. No one's heard what the other person has read as far as this is going to be new for everyone. It's not a rehearsed thing. It's live, and it comes with all of the exciting,
caveats.
Thank you. All exciting caveats that come with that, and so that kind of makes it more authentic, I think, and that's really what the theme of the Black History Month events are at University of Maryland this year. I believe Micah is the student group, the multicultural group on campus, and they chose Black authenticity as the theme. And so what is more authentic than being live and reading and experiencing it all together for the first time without practice, all of us together. So it's really exciting. I am ecstatic. I've seen some of the pieces that people are going to read, and this has been a really awesome event. We love having it every year. This is definitely something we want to keep going. So I'm just here to support Aaron and everyone, and Antonia and the rest of the IDEA Committee. And the IDEA Committee stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Accessibility. I also want to let everyone know that we have, closed captioning. We're trying to be as accessible as possible. If you have any ideas about how we might make this more accessible, please let us know. I believe our email address for the IDEA Committee is lib-idea at umd.edu. And so we'll find somewhere to post that as well, so that we can make sure that we keep the lines of communication open for everyone. So I know that our first reader wasn't supposed to start till 11:15, but I think we're going to have lots and lots of readers just kind of stacked on top of each other. It's going to be those 5 minutes slots are going to go super fast. So I'm going to turn it back over to Aaron and enjoy. I'm excited. So if you can't tell, I'm ready to go. I love reading. I love books. It's kind of a problem. So
it's a good thing you work at the libraries.
You know, it's amazing how things kind of work out that way.
Right?
You know, like,
I'd also like to say that this is the third annual Read-a-thon. We did live stream it last year as well. So you can go to our YouTube, which is UMD Libraries. It's currently live streaming and it'll be recorded and available afterwards. And that being said, you can also visit our Twitter, which is our username is at UMD Libraries, and you can use that to at us or see if there's anything that you want to be read. And then you can also visit our Instagram, which is the same URL, which is at UMD Libraries. So that being said, I know we have our first reader coming up then, which would be Mary Galvin. If Mary, you want to turn your camera on and get reading. Hi, Mary. Welcome.
Hey, I do want to get reading. First of all, I want to thank the committee for doing this event again this year. It's a great opportunity to get to read a lot of different things in a hurry to find something perfect for this event. And I read so many great things, and I just picked this one piece. It's from a book called There's a Revolution Outside, My Love, Letters from a Crisis. It's edited by Tracy K. Smith, who is the former poet laureate of the United States, and John Freeman. I bought this book at Busboys and Poets. I'll put a little shout out for them because they have a great selection of books on topics such as this. So I'm going to start off with, I'm going to do an excerpt because of the short time period that we have from a piece called On Motherhood and Ancestral Resistance. It's written by Kirsten West Savali, who's a writer and cultural critic. And she works in the areas of in the intersections of racism, social justice, Black feminism, and politics. And this piece was written as a letter to her son, Walker. This is the very end of the piece, but the beginning of it is also wonderful. So if you get a chance to check out this book or you want to borrow it from me, let me know. So I will go ahead and get started with it. Our family's legacy is too deep and our love too strong for a badge-wearing coward to strip away. It was that power that helped me rise up from the hell in which I'd been cast when your dad was diagnosed. It was that power that sustained me when I uprooted our family to move to Houston for his treatment. It was that power that protected us when Hurricane Harvey flooded us out of our home and into a shelter, then into a hotel. And it is that power, fueled by ancestral resilience, community solidarity, and love, always love, that lives in and surrounds you always. It is 5 a.m. now, Walker, and I can't sleep. I hear you in your room, laughing and talking to friends who you haven't seen in person since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. Your baby brothers are nestled against me. I'm on your dad's side of the bed, writing you this letter with his socks on my feet and his wedding ring over my heart. We thought he'd had more time. We had more time. We thought he'd be here to raise you into manhood. And I'm terrified that I can't keep you safe. Where in the world is safe for you, my beautiful, beautiful boy? These are a mother's fears. There's a revolution outside, my love. And as empires and tears fall, you need to know that you come from a tradition of Mississippi warriors who have resisted despair's siren song and remixed it until it sounded like freedom. You need to know that, yes, one day you may feel like that. And I'm so sorry that I can't protect you from all of it. You may grieve and mourn and scream from the depths of your soul, as so many of our people are doing now, not just in streets across this country and around the globe, but in bedrooms and around the kitchen tables where there are no cameras, no lights, or hashtags. If that should happen, baby, I promise you this. You will see your pain in others as I see my pain in you, and you will see your power in others as I see my power in you. And now, right now, I call on all our ancestors to guide my steps in such a way that I'm still alive to love you through it. My son, it is my honor to bear witness to your journey. I live in gratitude for you. I am in awe of you. You made me a mother. Your dad and I dreamed of you. We dreamed for you. And now I will fight for your joy and your freedom all the days of my life. With my whole heart, Mom, August 6th, 2020.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you so much.
That was so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's see who we have next. Next, we have Emily Dinehart. Are you in here?
I am.
Hi, Emily. Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you for coming.
Hi, thank you for having me. So as Antonia said, my name is Emily Dinehart, and I am the English, Linguistics, and Psychology librarian at UMD Libraries. And today I'm going to be reading an excerpt from Michael Twitty's The Cooking Gene, A Journey Through African American Culinary History in the Old South. Michael W. Twitty is an African American Jewish writer, culinary historian, and educator. And his book, The Cooking Gene, won the 2018 James Beard Foundation Book Award for Book of the Year. So this book, I'm just going to read the preface for you guys today. There's a lot of really wonderful things in this book, hard things in this book. I borrowed it from the UMD Libraries if anybody would like to check it out for themselves. So without further ado, here's the preface of The Cooking Gene. It's titled The Old South, and there's a preface to the preface. Quote, Negroes in the North are right when they refer to the South as the old country. A Negro born in the North who finds himself in the South is in a position similar to that of the son of the Italian immigrant who finds himself in Italy, near the village where his father first saw the light of day. Both are in countries they have never seen, but which they cannot fail to recognize. The landscape has always been familiar. Everywhere he turns, the revenant finds himself reflected. He sees himself as he was before he was born. He sees his ancestors who, in everything they do and are, proclaim his inescapable identity. And the Northern Negro in the South sees, whatever he or anyone else may wish to believe, that his ancestors are both white and Black. James Baldwin, Nobody Knows My Name, A Letter from the South. So then we get into Michael Twitty's preface. The Old South is a place where people use food to tell themselves who they are, to tell others who they are, and to tell stories about where they've been. The Old South is a place of groaning tables across the tracks from want. It's a place where arguments over how barbecue is prepared or chicken is served or whether sugar is used to sweeten cornbread can function as culinary shibboleths. It is a place in the mind where we dare not talk about which came first, the African cook or the European mistress, the Native American woman or the white woodsman. We just know that somehow the table aches from the weight of two so much that we prop it up on our knees, an excuse to keep it from falling. The Old South is where people are far more likely to be related to one another than not. It is where everybody has a Cherokee, a Creek, a Crickshaw, a Seminole, or a Choctaw lurking in their maternal bloodlines, but nobody knows where the broad noses or big asses come from. It is a place where dark gums and curly hair get chalked up to lost Turks and meandering mystics, but Nigeria and Gambia are long forgotten, unlike everything else that is perpetually and unremittingly remembered. Proud bloodlines of Normandy and Westphalia and Country Armagh and the Kent endure here, and like it or not, it is often in the bodies that bear no resemblance to those in whom those genes first arrived, bodies like mine. The Old South is a forgotten little Africa, but nobody speaks of it that way. Everything Black folks gave to the aristocracy and plain folks became spun gold in the hands of others, from banjos to barbecue to Elvis to rice and cotton know-how. Everything we Black Southerners kept for ourselves, often the unwanted dregs and markers of resistance, felt like markers of backwardness, scratches of the uncivilized, idolatry, and the state of being lost. And yet I loved that old South and loved it fiercely in all her funkiness and dread. To be honest, I never hated white people for their strange relationship to us, their colored kith and kin, but I grew up with the suspicion that they had no clue just how much of us there was in their family trees and stories and bloodlines and on their groaning tables. Maybe if they did, we would know less enmity towards one another. The Old South is where I had to return. The Old South is my name for the former slaveholding states and the history and culture that collectively birthed from the days of contact through civil rights. My Old South doesn't even end when white people started recovering from the Civil War and moved to southern cities and start working in mills and factories. My Old South ends when Black people are formally and forcefully brought out of the 19th century in the middle of the 20th. Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia, North and South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas, and Oklahoma. Pretty much the census South. Heads may shake over this list, but my geography is determined by the fact that the South is multi-regional. Landscapes, politics, subcultures, climates, ecosystems, and crops separate Blue Ridge from Bayou Country, Chesapeake from the Ozarks, the Black Belt from the Low Country, the Delta from Bluegrass Country, and Middle Tennessee. Old South culture is also not bound up by growing up in the former Confederacy. Where are you from in the South? Privileges, settlements, and cities, not to mention the white folks' version of what Southern means. The former Confederacy is not the totality of the South or Southern culture, and the Deep South is younger than the Seaboard and Upper South. The prominent cities of the New South, while markers of the Sun Belt, are not really where the vernacular culture of the South came to be. It was in the wide swaths of densely populated rural country, often not far from rivers, where the elements came together. In 2011, I remembered that I had started to forget where I came from. I became aware of my own apathy and amnesia. I had a responsibility to study the generations before me and use that to move forward. So I worked with my then partner to craft a crowdfunding campaign called the Southern Discomfort Tour. My goal was for us to travel the South looking for sites of cultural and culinary memory while researching my family history and seeing the food culture of the region as it stood in the early 21st century. There are giant peaches on top of towers and statues of boll weevils and giant mammies, and country stores that sell pig parts aplenty and have coolers that can keep a deer carcass or a mess of largemouth bass cold for 3 days. Nothing can prepare you for the sea of green cane or rice or tobacco, or the way cotton looks when it's young and bushy and putting up mallow-like blossoms. The road signs are clear. 3 crosses on a hill, get right with God, signs for cans of field peas and succotash, buffet-style halls, and meat and threes off the highway, a nondescript adult entertainment center. Old plantations lend their names to actual historical sites on the brown landmark signs, as well as to apartment complexes and resorts, and battlefields are everywhere. In some town centers, the auction blocks are remembered. From the town I live in Maryland to Oxford, Mississippi, the Confederate soldier stands guard near the old courthouse, and people will point out to you where the hanging tree stood or stands. There's a lot of beautiful and a lot of ugly mashed together. Pecan trees are my favorite thing, and they stand guard over my grandfather's house in South Carolina. Nothing matches light filtering through Spanish moss in the latest part of the day. The elders talked about how beautiful this place was, and if you're lucky, you will learn why they left it and what that first taste of northern cold was like, and the realization some things were no better no matter where you lived. In the words of my maternal grandmother, the day I learned up north streets weren't paved with gold and that white people there could be just as bad was the way I learned that sometimes the grass is greener because there's more shit to deal with. But she missed the crepe myrtles, and my grandfather missed the taste of ripe cane nabbed from a neighbor's yard. I had to come see it all for myself. I'm almost done, I promise. So it's a misnomer, the Old South. The South has never been still or merely aged. It is not stagnant, and it is not as set in its ways or physical boundaries as much as some would like to pretend. Perhaps there's nothing old about the South except its heirs. Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Arkansas, old. The first 2 were barely middle-aged. Georgia was just starting to think about being emeritus, and Arkansas was in puberty when the war between the states, because real Southerners don't say the Civil War, broke out. The New South waits for us but it's less place than lingering idea. And the postmodern South, who cares? Nothing is made there. In our minds, nothing is like the Old South, home of the original American rebel. The Old South was introduced to me in movies and magazines as the bizarre places we Black Americans owed our identity. Untanned, ageless white ladies in pastel crinolines, Carolina blue, pale jessamine yellow, dogwood blossom pink, mint julep green, bedazzled with stars and bars and frills aplenty. Parasols and fat black crones called mammies and crusting, crooning, near senile Xbox funnily called uncle. Everybody and everything was satisfactual and in their right place. White men in white columns and bow ties on white suits, the kind you'd never dream of getting chicken gravy or whip blood on. Blemishes and benign, a patriarchy overlooking a peaceful racial hierarchy ordained by a creator with a permanent beef with Cain and Ham, and then Joshua butted in. Now therefore ye are cursed, and there shall none of you be freed from being bondmen and hewers of wood and drawers of water for the house of my God. Hewers of wood and drawers of water. The Oprah Winfrey Show, 1987. Oprah goes to Forsyth County, Georgia, where no Black person had been allowed to live for 75 years. She had been on the air for 5 months. Confederate battle flags were on display. A people unreconstructed came out in force to show America's future richest Black person where she stood. What seemed like the entire town showed up to justify their whitopia. No racial description whatsoever appears in the scripture for Cain or Canaan, son of Ham. And the verse from the book of Joshua has nothing to do with anyone living in America, and yet a man had his Bible open, ready, in 1987 to justify a permanent and seemingly ancient division that did not exist in the British mind before the late 16th to mid-17th centuries. My Alabama born and raised grandmother, a refugee of Birmingham, is folding clothes. Under her breath is a constant stream of God damn them. Her breath slowed to a seethe, and her eyes became fixed into what seemed like a cut from which she would never return. I was 10, and I was barely taught in any school that in my own area, the Washington Metroplex, slavery and racism had defined the economy, politics, and social order. Seeing this made me dread my own country and presumably my own ancestral homeland, the Old South. The lazy, laughing South with blood on its mouth, and I, who am Black, would love her, wrote Langston Hughes, a refugee of Joplin, Missouri, the poet laureate of Black America. The poems I was bid to remember frequently referenced a place that was caught up in a weird braid of nostalgia, lament, romance, horror, and fear. Forsyth County, Georgia is no longer the same place it was nearly 30 years ago, and Black people have since moved in. And yet across the region, flashpoints continue. The shootings, the draggings, the overreach of police authority, the obstruction of the vote, inequalities and inequities, and silent and sturdy boundaries between white and Black. For some, we are the South, but they are Dixie. And yet we and they all know the old hanging trees and the strange fruit they once bore. I dare to believe all Southerners are family. We're not merely Native, European, and African. We are Middle Eastern and South Asian and East Asian and Latin American now. We are a dysfunctional family, but we are a family. We are unwitting inheritors of a story with many sins that bears the fruit of the possibility of 10 times the redemption. One way is through reconnection with the culinary culture of the enslaved, our common ancestors, and restoring their names on the roots of the Southern tree and the table those roots support. The Old South is where I cook. The Old South is a place where food tells me where I am. The Old South is a place where food tells me who I am. The Old South is where food tells me where we have been. The Old South is where the story of our food might just tell America where it's going. The Old South with soul food in its mouth, and I, who am African American, must know her. Thanks.
Thank you, Emily.
Thank you so much. I think next we have Anika.
Yep.
Would like to read something. And I also want to remind people that we do have a person that is doing our live transcription. And to try to read a little, not slow, but enough so she can catch up.
So sorry.
Oh, it's okay, Emily. I should have mentioned it at the beginning.
Go ahead, Nika.
Hi, everyone. Today, I will be reading from Tarana Burke and Brene Brown's You Are Your Best Thing. There we go. You can see the cover. It's going to be an excerpt from an essay by Tanya Denise Fields called Dirty Business, the Messy Affair of Rejecting Shame. I don't know a time where I haven't felt guilty or ashamed. This has colored literally every decision I have made in my life. And the more I let it lead, the more I fucked shit up for myself, the deeper the well of shame got. I have felt ashamed for being dark, or for having a broad nose, of my big lips, of my prematurely developed body, and later my fat body with its rolls and saggy titties and hangy belly and stretch marks. I have felt deep shame for not going to a better school, for not getting a good traditional job, for my struggles, for my literal hunger, for not staying with the father of 6 babies who I had by 4 men who abandoned us. Sorry, yes. Sometimes I was ashamed of being the one who stayed. And all that shame ate me up, made me shrink, exhausted me, made me perpetually tired. A few years ago, I woke up a 310-pound chain smoker with scratches around my neck, a bruised throat, and my eyes swollen shut from crying all night. My kid's father had almost killed me. Our union had added 2 more children to my brood. We lived in a shitty-ass apartment on Fox Street in a resilient and struggling part of South Bronx. He was a ne'er-do-well, a corner boy who always fucked up his packs and came up short, and I was carrying the whole family. And even though I was his lover, surrogate mommy, and baby mama, he still had the wherewithal to become my abuser, emotionally, mentally, and physically, and eventually almost killing me in front of our children after coming home from a 2-year bid in New York State prison. I had long become used to being a punching bag or a doormat or a real live masturbatory tool for the romantic partners in my life. And I had long internalized the ways in which people in my family and community saw me, mammy. That word had been thrown around for most of my adult life, especially after the birth of my second child. And I was keenly aware that most folks were comfortable using it because of the way I looked. My shame, my guilt for existing, for being viewed as ugly and undesirable, for surviving, has always been rooted in the way I look. It has not only lived in my body, but has been because of my body, and everything else has rippled from there. And sitting there in the 41st precinct, being asked by some dismissive ass white cop who couldn't be bothered to look me in my black ass face why it took me so long to disclose, I just felt more tired than I had ever felt in my fucking life. What had shame gotten me? Shame doesn't course correct or compel folks to make better choices. I was living in a community full of women who felt shamed, who had been born of shame, who projected nothing but shame, and it did nothing for us. It had done nothing for me. Shame is a liar, a thief, a murderer of dreams and vision. It is a manipulator. It too is an abuser. I almost died in front of my kids, and I was tired, exhausted, cracked wide the fuck open, and broken into a million pieces of shame. And here I was, just holding my guts in with my hands, and I got to see what I was made of. And it wasn't shame. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't ugliness. It wasn't lack or deficiency. It was magic, cocoa powder, shards of glass and shrapnel, and the deepest parts of my grandmother's imaginations. I am savory. I am sweet, salt, sugar, and lime, possessing the gentleness of the brightest lilies and the strength and temerity of the most destructive storms. Most important, I am worthy. And that was the critical shift. And that's my contribution.
That was so good. You read that. Oh, that was so good.
Oh, wow. And that way, yeah, I'm glad I made it through without tearing up there. Yeah. But I get to talk a little bit more because I'm just an honorary co-host. I'm just gonna go ahead and call it that. I know that we have a little bit before our next reader comes along, but I'm really excited.
Actually, I thought I was
Judy's here.
scheduled at
Judy's
11:30.
here. Oh wow.
Yes.
And I kind of have
update.
a schedule, so
Oh, okay, because yeah, I had
sorry.
someone coming up at 11:45, but
I have
jump right in,
11:30.
Judy.
Is that right?
I apologize.
Is that right, Antonia?
Yeah. So you're gonna be speaking now. So next we have Judy Markowitz, a
Sorry.
librarian at the University of Maryland Libraries. And if you are on YouTube watching us right now, I'd really love it if you liked our video. It really helps with the views and our interactions. So here you go. Give it to
Mine won't be as long as the others. So, and Anika, you can continue to talk after I'm done. So, and sorry, I'm dog sitting, and this dog you can hear him crying. Okay, so I found a poem by Nikki Giovanni titled "A Poem for My Librarian, Mrs. Long." A poem for my librarian, Mrs. Long. You never know what troubled little girl needs a book. At a time when there was not TV before 3 p.m. and on Sunday, none until 5, we sat on the front porches watching the JFG sign go on and off, greeting the neighbors, discussing the political situation, congratulating the preacher on his sermon. There was always the radio, which brought us songs from WLAC in Nashville and what we would now call easy listening or smooth jazz. But when I listened late at night with my portable that I was so proud of, tucked under my pillow, I heard Nat King Cole and Matt Dennis, June Christie, and Ella Fitzgerald, and sometimes Sarah Vaughan sing Black Coffee, which I now drink. It was just called music. There was a bookstore uptown on Gay Street, which I visited and inhaled that wonderful odor of new books. Even today, I read hardcover as a preference, paperback only as a last resort. And up the hill on Vine Street, the main Black corridor, sat our Carnegie Library. Mrs. Long, always glad to see you. The stereoscope always ready to show you far away places to dream about. Mrs. Long asking, what are you looking for today? When I wanted Leaves of Grass or Alfred North Whitehead, she would go to the big library uptown, and I now know, hat in hand, to ask to borrow so that I might borrow. Probably they said something humiliating, since Southern whites like to humiliate Southern Blacks. But she nevertheless brought the books back, and I held them to my chest, close to my heart, and happily skipped back to grandmother's house, where I would sit on the front porch in a gray glider and dream of a world far away. I love the world where I was safe and warm, and grandmother gave me neck kissed when I was on my way to bed. But there was a world somewhere out there, and Mrs. Long opened that wardrobe, but no lions or witches scared me. I went through knowing there would be spring. I know it was short, but being the librarian and taking her away to faraway places really spoke to me.
Thank you so much for sharing, Judy. Well, let's see who we have next.
I think we have a little break until about 11:40, according to the most recent sign-up sheet.
I have a couple things in line to read if you like me to.
Oh, yes.
Just get started on that.
Oh, wonderful. All right, I'm going away.
All right. So I'm reading from an author called Zadie Smith, who wrote a book during COVID lockdown called Intimations. Zadie Smith is an author from North London who's biracial. She's English and Jamaican, and she has beautiful novels. When I read White Teeth by her, I kind of fell in love. So let me just get started. This is a chapter called Something to Do. If you are an artist of whatever stripe, at some point you'll be asked or may ask yourself why you act, sculpt, paint, whatever. In the writing world, this question never seems to get old. In each generation, a few too many people will feel moved to pen an essay called, inevitably, Why I Write, or Why Write? Under each title, you'll find a lot of convoluted, more or less self-regarding reasons and explanations. I've contributed to this genre myself. Only a few of them are any good, and none of them, including my own, see fit to mention the surest motivation I know, the one I feel deepest within myself, in which, when all is said, done, stripped away, as it is at the moment, seems to be at truth of the matter for a lot of people, to wit, it's something to do. I used to stand at podiums or in front of my own students and have that answer on the tip of my tongue. But if I knew, but knew if I say it out loud, it would be mistaken for a joke or a fake humility or perhaps plain stupidity. Now I'm gratified to find this most honest of phrases in everybody's mouths all of a sudden, and an answer to almost every question. Why did you bake that banana bread? It was something to do. Why did you make a fort in your living room? Well, it's something to do. Why dress the dog as a cat? It's something to do, isn't it? Fills the time. Out of an expanse of time, you carve a little area that nobody asked you to carve, and you do something. But perhaps the difference between the kind of something that I'm used to and this new culture of doing something is the moral anxiety that surrounds it. The something that artists have always done is more usually cordoned off from the rest of society, and by mutual agreement, this space is considered a sort of charming but basically useless playpen, in which adults get to behave like children, making up stories and pictures and so on. Though at least they provide some form of pleasure to serious people doing actual jobs. The more utilitarian-minded defenders of art justify its existence by insisting upon its potential political efficacy, which is usually overstated. Artists themselves are especially fond of overstating it. But even if you believe in the potential political efficacy of art, as I do, few artists would dare to count on its timeliness. It's a delusional painter who finishes a canvas at 2 o'clock and expects a radical social transformation by 4. Even when artists write manifestos, they are hopefully aware that their exigent tone is finally borrowed, only echoed and mimicking the urgency. One second, I got lost because I heard a noise. ADHD, am I right? The people sometimes demand change. They almost never demand art. As a consequence, art stands in a dubious relation to necessity and to time itself. It's something to do, yes, but when it is done, or whether it is done at all, it is generally considered a question for artists alone. An attempt to connect the artist's labor with the work of truly laboring people is frequently made, but always strikes me as tenuous, with the fundamental dividing line being this question of the clock. Labor is work done by the clock and paid by it too. Art takes time and divides it up as art sees fit. It is something to do. But the crisis has taken this familiar division between the time of art and the time of work and transformed it. Now there are essential workers who do not need to seek something to do, whose task is vital and unrelenting. And there are the rest of us, all with a certain amount of time on our hands. Not to mention an economic time bomb, which for many people exploded within the first few weeks, within the first few days. One of the radical political possibilities of our new relatory expanse of free time, as many have noted, is that it might create a collective demand to reassess and reconfigure as a society how we protect the rights of those whose work exists only in the present moment, without security or protection against unknown futures. The most obvious unknown future being sick leave. The rest of us have been suddenly confronted with the perennial problem of artists, time, and what to do with it. I think I'm going to stop there because I have, there's quite a few pages left, and if we have any time to fill, I can probably finish it.
Thank you for reading. Oh, yeah, there's Aaron.
Sorry, technical difficulties on my end.
Let's see, is Drew here by chance yet?
Yes, Drew Barker is here.
Drew, would you like to read a few minutes early? Hi, Drew.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes,
Yes.
I can. Thank you, Antonia. All right. Well, thank you for everyone who organized this. I really appreciate it. What I chose today was Frederick Douglass, the great orator, the amazing statue that stands outside of Hornbeck, the fellow Marylander, the man who had his birthday this week because he chose it, because he did not know exactly when his birthday was, so he chose Valentine's Day, or so I read once upon a time. But I chose Douglass because of his fire and passion, because of the book bans that have been on my mind as a librarian, and because he's one of the greatest writers and orators of the 19th century, period. How about that? Okay, so I'm going to be reading two excerpts from two different speeches, and then I'm going to read a poem. The first Frederick Douglass excerpt from a speech that I'm reading is from 1852, which would be 9 years before the Civil War. In 1852, and this speech is entitled, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July?" And I'm reading an excerpt from this speech. At a time like this, scorching irony, not convincing argument is needed. Oh, had I the ability and could reach the nation's ear, I would, today, pour out a fiery stream of biting ridicule, blasting reproach, withering sarcasm, and stern rebuke. For it is not light that is needed, but fire. It is not the gentle shower, but thunder. We need the storm, the whirlwind, the earthquake. The feeling of the nation must be quickened. The conscience of the nation must be roused. The propriety of the nation must be startled. The hypocrisy of the nation must be exposed. And its crimes against God and man must be proclaimed and denounced. What to the American slave is your 4th of July? I answer, a day that reveals to him, more than all other days in the year, the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is the constant victim. To him, your celebration is a sham, your boasted liberty an unholy license, your national greatness swelling vanity. Your sounds of rejoicing are empty and heartless. Your denunciations of tyrants, brass-fronted impudence. Your shouts of liberty and equality, hollow mockery. Your prayers and hymns, your sermons and thanksgivings, with all your religious parade and solemnity are, to him, mere bombast, fraud, deception, impiety, and hypocrisy. A thin veil to cover up crimes which would disgrace a nation of savages. There is not a nation on earth guilty of practices more shocking and bloody than are the people of these United States at this very hour. Go where you may, search where you will, roam through the monarchies and despotisms of the old world, travel through South America, search out every abuse. And when you have found the last, lay your facts by the side of the everyday practices of this nation, and you will say with me that for revolting barbarity and shameless hypocrisy, America reigns without rival. Behold, the practical operation of this internal slave trade, the American slave trade sustained by American politics and American religion. Here you will see men and women reared like swine for the market. You know what is a swine drover. I will show you a man drover. They inhabit all our southern states. Follow the drove to New Orleans. Attend the auction. See men examined like horses. See the forms of women rudely and brutally exposed to the shocking gaze of the American slave buyers. See this drove sold and separated forever, and never forget the deep and sad sobs that arose from that scattered multitude. Tell me, citizens, where under the sun you can witness a spectacle more fiendish and shocking. Yet this is but a glance at the American slave trade as it exists at this moment in the ruling part of these United States. That was Frederick Douglass from 1852. Now, I would like to jump 30 years in time to another Frederick Douglass speech in 1883 in his address to the Louisville Convention, where after the Civil War, after emancipation in the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, things have changed, but this is also during Reconstruction, almost post-Reconstruction. So it's interesting to see how Frederick Douglass's sentiment has changed and not changed. Frederick Douglass, 1883. A brief excerpt. Born on American soil, in common with yourselves, deriving our bodies and our minds from its dust, centuries have passed away since our ancestors were torn from the shores of Africa. We, like yourselves, hold ourselves to be, in every sense, Americans, and that we may, therefore, venture to speak to you in a tone not lower than that which becomes earnest men and American citizens. Having watered your soil with our tears, enriched it with our blood, performed its roughest labor in time of peace, defended it against enemies in times of war, and at all times been loyal and true to its best interests, we deem it no arrogance or presumption to manifest now a common concern with you for its welfare, prosperity, honor, and glory. I'm going to skip to the end of the speech where he says, we hold it to be self-evident that no class or color should be the exclusive rulers of this country. If there is such a ruling class, then there must, of course, be a subject class. And when this condition is once established, this government of the people, by the people, and for the people will have perished from the earth. So that's Frederick Douglass. I am now going to read a poem by Natasha Trethewey, two-time poet laureate of the United States, who visited this campus sometime in the last decade, and I was able to see her here on campus. She was amazing. Her poem is entitled Elegy for the Native Guards. And there's a preface that reads, now that the salt of their blood stiffens the saltier oblivion of the sea, from Alan Tate. Now, here's the poem by Natasha Trethewey. Elegy for the Native Guards. We leave Gulfport at noon, gulls overhead, trailing the boat, streamers, noisy fanfare, all the way to Ship Island. What we see first is the fort, its roof of grass, a lee, half reminder of the men who served there, a weathered monument to some of the dead. Inside, we follow the ranger, hurried though we are to get to the beach. He tells of graves lost in the Gulf, the island split in half when Hurricane Camille hit, shows us casemates, cannons, the store that sells souvenirs, tokens of history long buried. The Daughters of the Confederacy have placed a plaque here at the fort's entrance. Each Confederate soldier's name raised hard in bronze. No names carved for the Native Guards, 2nd Regiment, Union men, Black Phalanx. What is monument to their legacy? All the grave markers, all the crude headstones, water lost. Now fish dart among their bones, and we listen for what the waves intone. Only the fort remains, near 40 feet high, round, unfinished, half open to the sky, the elements, wind, rain, God's deliberate eye. That was Natasha Trethewey's poem, Elegy for the Native Guards, published in 2007. Thank you for your time, and thank you again for organizing this, y'all.
Drew, thank you
Thank you so
for
much,
reading.
Drew. That was wonderful.
Yes.
You're always a great orator, so thank you for joining us.
Drew, I want to be like you, man.
Next, is Lisa available? Hi,
Hi,
Lisa.
Lisa.
Welcome. Gonna leave you to it.
Okay. Drew is a really hard act to follow, but what I decided to read was a chapter from Maya Angelou's first autobiographical book called I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings. I had some difficulty picking what chapter I wanted to do, but I decided I was going to do the last chapter. And to give it a little bit of context, she is at this point struggling to figure out her sexuality. And so she has had sex with a man, just a one-night stand, and now she's discovered that she's pregnant. The world had ended, and I was the only person who knew it. People walked along the streets as if the pavements haven't all crumbled beneath their feet. They pretended to breathe in and out, while all the time I knew that the air had been sucked away in a monstrous inhalation from God himself. I alone was suffocating in the nightmare. The little pleasure I was able to take from the fact that if I could have a baby, I was obviously not a lesbian, was crowded in my mind's tiniest corner by the massive pushing in of fear, guilt, and self-revulsion. For eons, it seemed, I had accepted my plight as a hapless put-upon victim of fate and the Furies. But this time, I had to face the fact I had brought my new catastrophe upon myself. How was I to blame for the innocent man who I had lured into making love to me? In order to be profoundly dishonest, a person must have one of two qualities. Either he is unscrupulously ambitious, or he is unswervingly egocentric. He must believe that for his ends to be served, all things and people can be justifiably shifted about, or that he is the center not only of his own world, but of the worlds which others inhabit. I had neither element in my personality. So I hefted the burden of pregnancy at 16 upon my own shoulders where it belonged. Admittedly, I staggered under the weight. I finally sent a letter to Bailey, who was at sea with a merchant marine. He wrote back, and he cautioned me against telling Mother of my condition. We both knew her to be violently opposed to abortions, and she would very likely order me to quit school. Bailey suggested that if I quit school before getting my high school diploma, I'd find it nearly impossible to return. My first 3 months, while I was adapting myself to the fact of pregnancy, I didn't really link pregnancy to the possibility of my having a baby until weeks before my confinement, were a hazy period in which days seemed to lie just below the water level, never emerging fully. Fortunately, Mother was tied up tighter than Dick's hatband in the weave of her own life. She noticed me, as usual, out the corner of her existence. As long as I was healthy, clothed, and smiling, she felt no need to focus her attention on me. As always, her major concern was to live the life given to her, and her children were expected to do the same, and to do it without too much brouhaha. Under her loose scrutiny, I grew more buxom, and my brown skin smooth and tight-pored, like pancakes fried on an unoiled skillet. And still, she didn't suspect. Some years before, I had established a code which never varied. I didn't lie. It was understood that I didn't lie because I was too proud to be caught and forced to admit that I was capable of less than Olympian action. Mother must have concluded that since I was above out not lying, I was also beyond deceit. She was deceived. All my emotions focalized on pretending to be that guileless schoolgirl who had nothing more worrying than to think about midterm exams. Strangely enough, I very nearly caught the essence of teenage capriciousness as I played the role, except there were times when physically I couldn't deny to myself that something very important was taking place in my body. Mornings, I never knew I would have to jump off the streetcar one step ahead of the warm sea of nausea that threatened to sweep me away. On solid ground, away from the ship motion vehicle and the smell of hands coated with recent breakfasts, I regained my balance and waited for the next trolley. School recovered its lost magic. For the first time since stamps, information was exciting for itself alone. I burrowed myself into the caves of facts and found delight in logical resolutions of mathematics. I credit my new reactions, although I didn't know at the time I had learned anything from them, to the fact that during what surely must have been a critical period, I was not dragged down by hopelessness. Life had a conveyor belt quality. It went on unpursued and unpursuing, and my only thought was to remain erect and keep my secret along with my balance. Midway along to delivery, Bailey came home and brought me a spun silver bracelet from South America, Thomas Wolfe's Look Homeward Angel, and a slew of new dirty jokes. As my 6 months approached, Mother left San Francisco for Alaska. She was to open a nightclub and planned to stay 3 or 4 months until it got on its feet. Daddy Clydell was to look after me, but I was more or less left on my own recognizance and under an unsteady gaze of Our Lady rumors. Mother left the city amid a happy and cheerful send-off party. After all, how many Negroes were in Alaska? And I felt treacherous allowing her to go without informing her that she was soon to be a grandmother. 2 days after V-Day, I stood with the San Francisco summer school class at Mission High School and received my diploma. That evening, in the bosom of the now dear family home, I uncoiled my fearful secret and in a brave gesture left a note on Daddy Clydell's bed. It read, "Dear parents, I am sorry to bring this disgrace on the family, but I am pregnant. Marguerite." The confusion that ensued when I explained to my stepfather that I expected to deliver the baby in 3 weeks, more or less, was reminiscent of a Molière comedy, except it was funny only years later. Daddy Clydell told Mother that I was 3 weeks gone. Mother, regarding me as a woman for the first time, said indignantly, "She's more than any 3 weeks." They both accepted the fact that I was further along than they had been first told, but found it nearly impossible to believe that I had carried a baby 8 months and 1 week without their being any the wiser. Mother asked, "Who is the boy?" I told her. She recalled him faintly. "Do you want to marry him?" "No." "Does he want to marry you?" The father had stopped speaking to me during my 4th month. "No." "Well, that's that. No use ruining 3 lives." There was no overt or subtle condemnation. She was Vivian Baxter Johnson, hoping for the best, prepared for the worst, and unsurprised by anything in between. Daddy Clydell assured me that I had nothing to worry about, that women been getting pregnant ever since Eve ate that apple. He sent one of his waitresses to I. Magnus to buy maternity dresses for me. For the next 2 weeks, I rolled around the city going to doctors, taking vitamin shots and pills, buying clothes for the baby, and except for the rare moments alone, enjoying the imminent blessed event. After a short labor and without too much pain, I decided that the pain of delivery was overrated. My son was born. Just as gratefulness was confusing my mind with love, so possession became mixed up with motherhood. I had a baby. He was beautiful and mine, totally mine. No one had bought him for me. No one had helped me endure the sickly gray months. I had help in the child's conception, but no one could deny that I had had an immaculate pregnancy. Totally my possession, and I was afraid to touch him. Home from the hospital, I sat for hours by his bassinet and absorbed his mysterious perfection. His extremities were so dainty, they appeared unfinished. Mother handled him easily with the casual confidence of a baby nurse, but I dreaded being forced to change his diapers. Wasn't I famous for awkwardness? Suppose I'd let him slip or put my fingers in that throbbing pulse on the top of his head. Mother came to my bed one night, bringing my 3-week-old baby. She pulled the cover back and told me to get up and hold him while she put rubber sheets on my bed. She explained that he was going to sleep with me. I begged in vain. I was sure to roll over and crush his life or break those fragile bones. She wouldn't hear of it. And within minutes, the pretty golden baby was lying on his back in the center of the bed, laughing at me. I lay on the edge of the bed, stiff with fear, and vowed not to sleep all night long. But in the eat-sleep routine that had begun in the hospital and kept under my mother's dictatorial command, got the better of me. I dropped off. My shoulder was shaking gently. Mother whispered, "Maya, wake up, but don't move." I knew immediately that the awakening had to do with the baby. I tensed. I'm awake. She turned the light on and said, "Look at the baby." My fears were so powerful, I couldn't move to look at the center of the bed. She said again, "Look at the baby." I didn't hear sadness in her voice, and that helped me to break the bonds of terror. The baby was no longer in the center of the bed. At first, I thought he had moved, but after a closer investigation, I found I was lying on my stomach with my arm bent at a right angle. Under the tent of blanket, which was pulled by my elbow and forearm, the baby slept touching my side. Mother whispered, "See, you don't have to think about doing the right thing. If you're for the right thing, then you do it without thinking." She turned out the light, and I patted my son's body lightly and went back to sleep. Thanks.
Thank you so much. I think I almost started crying, which is why I'm like, that's so beautiful. Next we have Dean Adrian Lim. If you're in the call, that would be, hi Adrian, I think you're next. Let me make it, you were supposed to go on at 12, right? Yes. So I'm gonna give it away. Everybody, this is Adrian Lim, the Dean of the University Libraries.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Antonia. Hello, Anika, Aaron, Idea Committee. Thank you so much for holding this amazing event. I'm going to be reading a few selected excerpts from Claudia Rankine's long-form work, Citizen, an American Lyric, which won the LA Times Book Award and the National Book Critics Circle Award in 2015. Claudia Rankine is an award-winning poet, essayist, and playwright, and she is professor of poetry at Yale University. You are in the dark in the car, watching the black tarred street being swallowed by speed. He tells you his dean is making him hire a person of color when there are so many great writers out there. You think maybe this is an experiment and you are being tested or retroactively insulted, or you have done something that communicates this is an okay conversation to be having. Why do you feel comfortable saying this to me? You wish the light would turn red or a police siren would go off so you could slam on the brakes, slam into the car ahead of you, fly forward so quickly both your faces would suddenly be exposed to the wind. As usual, you drive straight through the moment with the expected backing off of what was previously said. It is not only that confrontation is headache producing, it is also that you have a destination that doesn't include acting like this moment isn't inhabitable, hasn't happened before, and the before isn't part of the now as the night darkens and the time shortens between where we are and where we're going. When you arrive in your driveway and turn off the car, you remain behind the wheel another 10 minutes. You fear the night is being locked in and coded on a cellular level, and you want time to function as a power wash. Sitting there staring at the closed garage door, you're reminded that a friend once told you there exists the medical term John Henryism for people exposed to stresses stemming from racism. They achieve themselves to death trying to dodge the buildup of erasure. Sherman James, the researcher who came up with the term, claimed that physiological costs were high. You hope by sitting in silence that you are bucking the trend. A woman you do not know wants to join you for lunch. You're visiting her campus. In the cafe, you both order the Caesar salad. This overlap is not the beginning of anything, because she immediately points out that she, her father, her grandfather, and you all attended the same college. She wanted her son to go there as well, but because of affirmative action or a minority something, she's not sure what they're calling it these days, and weren't they supposed to get rid of it? Her son wasn't accepted. You're not sure if you are meant to apologize for this failure of your alma mater's legacy program. Instead, you ask where he ended up. The prestigious school she mentions doesn't seem to assuage her irritation. This exchange, in effect, ends your lunch. The salads arrive. You and your partner go to see the film, The House We Live In. You ask a friend to pick up your child from school. On the way home, your phone rings. Your neighbor tells you he is standing at his window watching a menacing Black guy casing both of your homes. The guy is walking back and forth, talking to himself, and seems disturbed. You tell your neighbor that your friend, whom he has met, is babysitting. He says, no, it's not him. He's met your friend, and this isn't that nice young man. Anyway, he wants you to know he's called the police. Your partner calls your friend and asks, is there a guy walking back and forth in front of your house? Your friend says that if anyone were outside the house, he would see him because he's standing outside. You hear the sirens through the speakerphone. Your friend is speaking to your neighbor when you arrive home. The 4 police cars are gone. Your neighbor has apologized to your friend and is now apologizing to you. Feeling somewhat responsible for the actions of your neighbor, you clumsily tell your friend that the next time he wants to talk on the phone, maybe he should just go in the backyard. He looks at you for a long time before saying he can speak on the phone wherever he wants. Yes, of course, you say. Yes, of course. And then one last excerpt. The new therapist specializes in trauma counseling. You have only ever spoken on the phone. Her house has a side gate that leads to a back entrance she uses for patients. You walk down a path bordered on both sides with deer grass and rosemary to the gate, which turns out to be locked. At the front door, the bell is a round disc that you press firmly. When the door finally opens, the woman standing there yells at the top of her lungs, "Get away from my house. What are you doing in my yard?" It's as if a wounded Doberman Pinscher or a German Shepherd has gained the power of speech. And though you back up a few steps, you manage to tell her you have an appointment. You have an appointment? She spits back. Then she pauses. Oh, she says, followed by, oh, yes, you're right. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us. I think Tiffany Rogers, are you in the call? Hi, how are you today?
There, I'm great. Hope everybody is well.
Yes, I'm gonna give you the floor.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. I'm going to read a poem today by an author, Terence Hayes. The poem is titled, "We Should Make a Documentary About Spades." This poem stood out to me because, you know, spades is a card game. And it's one of those things that I think many in the Black community and other communities would say is a tried and true sort of pastime in the Black community. You'd be hard pressed to find family gatherings, for example, holiday celebrations, picnics and barbecues, things like that, where the game of spades is not being played. It is competitive. Players are passionate and very vocal. And there's a lot of slamming of cards and hands on the table. And, you know, to someone that doesn't know any better, you might think people are angry and something awful is about to happen, but that's just the way the game is played. And in the end, mostly people leave and everyone's still friends and family, and it's all great. The author uses this poem as a way to talk about, you know, how spades impacts his life. It's a lyric poem written in the first person. And so just very interesting. Terence Hayes is a 2010 winner of the National Book Award in Poetry. He's an author of 7 poetry collections and currently serves on the Board of Chancellors of the Academy of American Poets. So here it is. And here's all we'll need: a card deck, quartets of sun people of the sort in Black college dormitories, some vintage music, indiscriminate spirits, fried chicken, some paper, a writing utensil, and a bottomless Saturday. We should explore the origins of a derogatory word like spade, as well as the word for feeling alone in polite company, and the implications of calling someone who is not your brother or sister, brother or sister. So little is known of our past, we can imagine damn near anything. When I say maybe slaves held spades tournaments on the anti-cruise ships bound for the colonies, you say when our ancestors were cooped on those ships, they were not yet slaves. Our groundbreaking film should begin with a low-lit den in the Deep South and the deep-fried voice of somebody's grandmother holding smoke in her mouth as she says, "The 2 of diamonds trumps the 2 of spades in my house." And at some point, someone should tell the story where Jesus and the devil are spades partners traveling the juke joints of the 1930s. We could interview my Uncle Junior and definitely your skinny cousin Mary and any Black man sitting at a card table wearing shades. Who do you suppose would win if Booker T and MLK were matched against Du Bois and Malcolm X in a game of spades? You say don't talk across the table, pay attention to the suits being played. The object of the game is to communicate invisibly with your teammate. I should concentrate. Do you suppose we're here because we are lonely in some acute diasporified way? This should be explored in our film about spades. Because it is one of the ways I'm still learning what it is to be Black, tonight I'm ready to master spades. 4 players bid a number of books. Each team adds the bids of the 2 partners, and the total is the number of books that team must try to win. Is that not right? This is a game that tests the boundary between mathematics and magic, if you ask me. A bid must be intuitive, like the itchiness of your upper lip before you sip strange whiskey. My mother did not drink, which is how I knew something was wrong with her, but she held a dry spot at the table when couples came to play. It's a scene from my history, but this probably should not be mentioned in our documentary about spades. Renege is akin to the word for the shame you feel watching someone else's humiliation. Slapping a card down must be as dramatic as hitting the face of a drum with your palm, not hitting the face of a drum with a drumstick. You say there may be the sort of outrage induced by liquor, trash talk, and poor strategy, but it will fade the way the watermark left on a table by a cold glass fades. I suspect winning this sort of game makes you feel godly. I'm good and ready for whoever we're playing against tonight. I'm trying to imagine our enemy. I know you are not my enemy. You say there are no enemies in spades. Spades is a game our enemies do not play. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. Let's see. It looks like we do have, is Keandra in the call?
I am here.
Hi, Keandra, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm going to give Keandra the floor, and to people that are just coming in or joining us to read, please be advised that there is an actual person that's doing the live transcriptions today. So when you're talking, please be sure to take some breaths. I know we can all get nervous. I do, certainly.
Thank you, Antonia. I'm going to drop the link for what I'm reading in here if anyone wants to follow along. So today I'm reading a piece called Poetry is Not a Luxury by Audre Lorde. The link is to the collection Sister Outsider, but the essay has been reprinted in a number of collections featuring Audre Lorde's work. And yes, I'll get started. The quality of light by which we scrutinize our lives has direct bearing upon the product which we live and upon the changes which we hope to bring about through those lives. It is within this light that we form those ideas by which we pursue our magic and make it realized. This is poetry as illumination, for it is through poetry that we give name to those ideas which are, until the poem, nameless and formless, about to be birthed, but already felt. That distillation of experience from which true poetry springs births thought as dream births concept, as feeling births idea, as knowledge births or precedes understanding. As we learn to bear the intimacy of scrutiny and to flourish within it, as we learn to use the products of that scrutiny for power within our living, those fears which rule our lives and form our silences begin to lose their control over us. For each of us as women, there is a dark place within where hidden and growing our true spirit rises, beautiful and tough as chestnut, stanching against your nightmare of weakness from Black mother woman and of impotence. These places of possibility within ourselves are dark because they are ancient and hidden. They have survived and grown strong through that darkness. Within these deep places, each one of us holds an incredible reserve of creativity and power, of unexamined and unrecorded emotion and feeling. The woman's place of power within each of us is neither white nor surface. It is dark, it is ancient, and it is deep. When we view living in the European mode only as a problem to be solved, we rely solely upon our ideas to make us free, for these were what the white fathers told us were precious. But as we become more in touch with our own ancient, non-European consciousness of living as a situation to be experienced and interacted with, we learn more and more to cherish our feelings and to respect those hidden sources of power from where true knowledge and therefore lasting action comes. At this point in time, I believe that women carry within ourselves the possibility for fusion of these two approaches, so necessary for survival. And we come closest to this combination in our poetry. I speak here of poetry as the revelation or distillation of experience, not the sterile wordplay that too often the white fathers distorted the word poetry to mean in order to cover a desperate wish for imagination without insight. For women, then, poetry is not a luxury. It is a vital necessity of our existence. It forms the quality of the light within which we predicate our hopes and dreams towards survival and change, first made into language, then into idea, then into more tangible action. Poetry is the way we help give name to the nameless so it can be thought. The farthest horizons of our hopes and fears are cobbled by our poems, carved from the rock experiences of our daily lives. As they become known to and accepted by us, our feelings and the honest exploration of them become sanctuaries and spawning grounds for the most radical and daring of ideas. They become a safe house for that difference so necessary to change and the conceptualization of any meaningful action. Right now, I can name at least 10 ideas I would have found intolerable or incomprehensible and frightening, except as they came after dreams and poems. This is not idle fantasy, but a disciplined attention to the true meaning of "it feels right to me." We can train ourselves to respect our feelings and to transpose them into a language so they can be shared. And where that language does yet exist, it is our poetry which helps to fashion it. Poetry is not only dream and vision, it is the skeleton architecture of our lives. It lays the foundation for a future of change, a bridge across our fears of what has never been before. Thank you.
Thank you, Keandra. That was wonderful. Next up, do we have Charles Wright in the call? Yes, we do. Hi, Charles. How are you today?
Just fine.
The floor.
This is Let America Be America Again by Langston Hughes. Though it was written in 1935, the title has a ring to it that seems like a prescient response to a more current phrase that I will not utter at the moment. Let America be America again. Let it be the dream it used to be. Let it be the pioneer on the plain seeking a home where he himself is free. America never was America to me. Let America be the dream that dreamers dreamed. Let it be that great, strong land of love where never kings connive nor tyrants scheme, that any man be crushed by one above. It never was America to me. Oh, let my land be a land where liberty is crowned with no false patriotic wreath, but opportunity is real and life is free. Equality is in the air we breathe. There's never been equality for me, nor freedom in this homeland of the free. Say, who are you that mumbles in the dark? And who are you that draws your veil across the stars? I am the poor white, fooled and pushed apart. I am the Negro bearing slavery's scars. I am the red man driven from the land. I am the immigrant clutching the hope I seek and finding only the same old stupid plan of dog eat dog, of mighty crush the weak. I am the young man full of strength and hope, tangled in that ancient, endless chain of profit, power, gain, of grab the land, of grab the gold, of grab the ways of satisfying need, of work the man, of take the pay, of owning everything for one's own greed. I am the farmer, bondsman to the soil. I am the worker sold to the machine. I am the Negro, servant to you all. I am the people, humble, hungry, mean, hungry yet today, despite the dream, beaten yet today. Oh, pioneers, I am the man who never got ahead, the poorest worker bartered through the years. Yet I'm the one who dreamt our basic dream in the old world, while still a serf of kings, who dreamt a dream so strong, so brave, so true, that even yet its mighty daring sings in every brick and stone, in every furrow turned, that's made America the land it has become. Oh, I'm the man who sailed those early seas in search of what I meant to be my home, for I'm the one who left dark Ireland's shore and Poland's plain and England's grassy lee, and torn from black Africa's strand, I came to build a homeland of the free. The free? Who said the free? Not me, surely not me. The millions on relief today, the millions shot down when we strike, the millions who have nothing for our pay, for all the dreams we've dreamed and all the songs we've sung and all the hopes we've held and all the flags we've hung, the millions who have nothing for our pay, except the dream that's almost dead today. Oh, let America be America again, the land that never has been yet, and yet must be, the land where every man is free, the land that's mine, the poor man's, Indians, Negroes, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, whose plow in the rain must bring back our mighty dream again. Sure, call me any ugly name you choose. The steel of freedom does not stain. For those who live like leeches on the people's lives must take back our land. We must take back our land again, America. Oh yes, I say it plain, America never was America to me, and yet I swear this oath, America will be. Out of the rack and ruin of our gangster death, the rape and rot of graft, and stealth and lies, we the people must redeem the land, the mines, the plants, the rivers, the mountains, and the endless plain, all the stretch of these great green states, and make America again. Thank you.
That's one of my favorites. Thank you so much, Charles, for joining us and reading. Let's see. Anika, do you have another piece you'd like to read?
I was going to finish the part or read another excerpt from the same essay that I started earlier. It's really long, but it's got a lot of good stuff in it. And I wanted to kind of start there. So I'm back with, more. I can't see it anymore. We did it right the first time. All right. So I'm going to continue Tanya Denise Fields, Dirty Business. I finally, without apology, verbalized that I ain't felt like I was much of anything for a good long while, and that it was not some personal failing, but a natural result of a world laden with fat antagonism, colorism, toxic ideas around sexuality, respectability politics bullshit, and a whopping dose of racism. And when all these things intersected, it made for a perfect low self-esteem cocktail. I didn't have low self-esteem as if it were something I just picked up in the supermarket. It was inherited. This was nurtured. This was force-fed to me through passive words, casual slaps, and cynical violence. It was normalized in media tropes and schoolyard taunts. It was insidious and invisible, but always present and consistent. And the irony was that it was shame that created this. It was shame that made me feel as if I could not openly verbalize and confront this and ultimately heal. But fuck that, I said. Rebuke shame. So I said it loudly. I said it often. I was insistent. I was relentless. And then my sisters came out of the shadows, empowered and vulnerable, sharing narratives of violence, hurt, and the shame that was always right there. Not really below the surface, but subconsciously always moving the hand that led our lives. I was in turn empowered, and I felt a powerful voice I didn't realize was there. I saw my reflection, what we were, what we could be. And suddenly I realized that happiness didn't have to be aspirational, that a very good thing in this world was denied to me and to them because of some arbitrary bullshit ideology, that we had to say no. It was inherently ours to claim. And I said that shit too. I said it loudly, sweetly, abrasively. And I was insistent, maybe even dogged, but I didn't care. I was giddy. This shit felt good. And I felt more free than I ever had in my life. I didn't owe the world prettiness or femininity or softness or strength, desirability or thinness, tippiness or boldness, children or chastity. The only one I owed anything to was myself. I owed my children a happy and whole human to raise them. That would be my legacy for them, and that would be their inheritance. I would start an endowment of radical joy and worthiness. That was my piece. I was happy to share. I think is my time up? or can I keep reading?
Oh, please.
Because there's more.
Let me.
But wait, there's more.
It looks like you have about 4 minutes left. So
Oh,
please go on.
I got a little extra time. Well,
Yeah.
let's go on. All right. Through a newfound grounding in West African spirituality, like Ifa from the Yoruba family and in individual therapy, the exploration of radical Black feminist and womanist ideology, and an online and offline community of like-minded Black women and femmes, I labored and rebirthed myself. I kept my foot on the necks of those in DHS, making sure they gave me what I needed. I was able to start to amass resources, including a contact on the mayor's domestic violence task force to hold folks accountable. I was out of the domestic violence shelter for 4 months. In 4 months. I found a bigger apartment with room enough for all of my babies, including a giant master bedroom that I filled with artwork of dark-skinned Black women and plants and pretty antique furniture and a big comfy bed. I embraced joy as my birthright, radical Black joy. It is inherent as a human need and not some special trinket you get after you rise high enough on the social economic ladder or unlock some special level of desirability or accomplishment. I decided I would claim and manifest every fucking thing someone told me I couldn't do. My birth mama, these raggedy niggas who would use my body as practice, my baby daddies, these friends who kept me around to feel better about themselves, and the overall society that inundates us from birth with a message that certain folks are more deserving and valuable is placed on their bodies, complexion and race, gender expression, physical and mental capabilities, educational levels, and whatever other fuck shit is arbitrarily made up and pushed into our minds and down our throats. Claiming and manifesting these things goes beyond just saying them. Rejecting shame is a messy and nasty affair. It's a dirty business. It requires some serious shadow work to unhinge yourself from the manifestation of hundreds of years of foolishness that shows up in every facet of our lives. You commit yourself to being uncomfortable. I committed myself to being uncomfortable. You commit yourself to some of the worst emotional pain you have ever felt. I committed myself to that pain. You want to literally crawl out of your skin. And this is not linear or exponential. And sometimes you realize that shame, hiding, shrinking, suffering is indefinitely easier in the short term than the arduous and intentional work of getting spiritually and emotionally free. But you create an abundant community that reminds you of what is on the other side, that loves you, that pours into you, that holds you, and sometimes shakes the shit out of you. You say in therapy, you say the affirmations, you embrace it all because it is in the fire that you will be forged. It is in there that you will find peace, joy, and liberation. It is in the fire that you destroy shame. So that's it for this bit. I may read again, depends on how many volunteers we have.
Thank you so much, Anika, as always. Next we have Patty Cosard on the list. Patty, you want to join us?
Hello.
We can hear you now. The floor is yours.
Okay, sorry I don't have a fancy background. I wish I did. Anyway, I am going to be reading to everyone today an article by Jonathan M. Cox. It's called On Shaky Ground, Black Authenticity at Predominantly White Institutions. Black racial authenticity, like authenticity in general, is a slippery concept. Broadly, Black authenticity can be defined as an ideological conceptualization of a true or real Black identity, encompassing the expectations of what it means to be Black. What makes Black authenticity so slippery, however, is that it is socially constructed. Definitions are constantly negotiated and reconstructed depending on a number of factors, including who is involved in its construction and the social and historical contexts in which the construction is taking place. For example, research suggests that ideas about Black authenticity are created in a variety of ways, based on differences in generations, social class, ethnicity, and skin color. The development of Black racial identity more broadly involves constructions of Black authenticity. That is, what constitutes real Blackness? College represents an important period of identity development for adolescents and young adults who pursue higher education, including the further exploration of racial identity. As such, the college environment is an important site for the consideration of Black authenticity processes. While Black college students are integral progenitors of Black authenticity, two things are important with regard to understanding how authentic Black identity is constructed on college campuses. First, Black students are not the only ones who shape notions of Black authenticity. Non-Blacks, including white students, faculty, and staff, also construct Blackness. As Stewart notes, college campuses are not culturally neutral sites for Black identity development. Many colleges and universities are still predominantly white, which means that Blacks are minoritized not only in physical numbers, but through institutional cultures that cater to the white minorities. As such, most predominantly white institutions, or PWIs, center whiteness in a way that marginalizes Black students, in part through perpetuation of narrowly defined stereotypes of authentic Blackness. Second, Black PWI students must negotiate authentic Blackness with other Black students whose views of Black authenticity can also be based on narrow definitions and be affected by prevailing white norms. Taken together, this means that Black PWI students are defining and negotiating authentic Blackness in social contexts that severely limit Black expression and identity through external pressure from white and other non-Black students, as well as from Black peers, which is a precarious position. These students must walk a thin, difficult line. They have to avoid being labeled as either too Black or inauthentically Black by white students, while simultaneously working to be seen as Black enough by other Black students. I suggest that this results in very shaky ground for Black authenticity at PWIs. To demonstrate the precarity of Black authenticity at PWIs, I draw on narratives from 44 Black identifying students at 2 predominantly white universities and 1 historically Black university, HBCU. I focus my analysis on PWI students using data from the HBCU students to highlight contrasts. By analyzing in-depth interviews and open-ended survey responses, I demonstrate that the social contexts of PWIs may significantly impact Black students' conceptualizations of and experiences with Black authenticity, resulting in a precarious sense of Black authenticity for Black students. Participant narratives reveal 3 main themes for the Black PWI students and important contrasts for the HBCU students. First, because of normalized whiteness, students at PWIs experience behavioral constraints as a result of tighter boundaries around Blackness and authentic Black identity drawn from both non-Black and Black peers. Second, PWI students describe boundaries that are drawn around Black authenticity authenticity for ethnic Blacks, effectively excluding some students from being considered fully Black while claiming an ethnic Black identity. If you'd like to hear more, you can read this article yourself on the library's website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patty.
Thanks, Patty.
And as Patty touched on, we will also, after the live stream, we will be sending out the list of things that people have read and where you can find them. And we'll also be adding it to the live stream replay afterwards. So next we have, is Beth Gay here? Hi,
Hey,
Beth.
Beth.
Hi, Antonia. Hi, Aaron.
You have.
Yep, you have the floor.
Okay, so this year's reading is personal for me. The book is called Soul Food: Recipes and Reflections from African American Churches by Joyce White. And it was published by HarperCollins in 1998 and given to me in December of that year as a Christmas gift from my neighbor, Thelma Campbell. Mrs. Campbell's beloved husband, George, had just passed away. And then the following summer, Mrs. Campbell went on to join him. So I don't have any words that are sufficient to describe how loving and kind they were. Well, the label affixed to the inside front cover reads, Yuletide Greetings. Try pages 35 and 36, signed by Thelma. So I'd like to read some excerpts from the introduction from the author, and then I'll jump ahead to page 35. And so here it is. Great book. For as long as I could remember, Mama would use 2 or 3 enamel dishes. Oh, no, I'm going to start over. I want to read more. The food vendor was seated on a street corner in the city of Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, and right at her feet were 2 cast iron pots, one brimming with black beans and pork, and the other filled with rice. To her left was a large white enamel pan with a red rim that held delicious fritters, dried shrimp, hot pepper sauce, and a bowl of greens that looked just like my mother's collards. I thought of home. For as long as I could remember, Mama would use 2 or 3 enamel dishes to carry food to Shiloh Baptist Church on the Sunday when our week-long revival got underway. As I stood on that street corner far away from home, in my mind, I could see her carefully placing a sweet potato pie into the blue and white speckled dish. She would then cut in half the caramel cake she had baked, wrap the pieces in wax paper, and place the cake around the pie. She would always find space for a dozen or so plump tea cakes, and then she would nestle the cake-like biscuits in the pan too. When the pan was full, she would spread out a colorful cloth that she had trimmed with rickrack bought at the dime store, set the pan in the middle of the fabric, gather up the ends, and tie a knot in the middle. With our church dinner in hand, we would begin our day, happy for the occasion. Our church revival was always held on the first Sunday in July, and it was a time of spiritual renewal, family reunions, and fellowship for the community. The celebration would begin on Sunday, and church service was held every night during the week, ending with a rousing closing sermon on Friday night. The nightly service was conducted by guest preachers, and worshipers would come from far and near to hear their favorite ministers. Each church in the county had a specific Sunday for its revival, and many of the people who had left our county years before would mark their return home by the revival at such and such church. The revivals, which some churches called homecomings, were always held during the summer, and the gatherings added a dash of excitement. to our hot, hot days. We would pass the afternoon in the comfort and security of this soul-satisfying place, the church. Just for the day, the harsh reality of our Jim Crow world was light years away. Years later, I realized that those summer revivals and homecomings at various Black churches in Choctaw County, Alabama, had kindled my passion for food. By that time, I had moved to New York City, where in the late 1960s, I landed a job as a food editor at a women's magazine. But often on the weekend, I would find myself at a church in Harlem or Bedford Stuyvesant, sometimes for a concert or a play, other times for service, and at other times simply to enjoy the food and the company. Food was always an integral part of these gatherings, and it was always cooked with thought and care, the two most important ingredients for a successful recipe. I felt at home. When I started this cookbook, I wanted to capture the wonderful food and experiences that not only shaped my childhood, but that still remain a vital part of African American life today. Our culinary history in this country is profound and influential. Our forebears worked this nation's great kitchens, from the White House to the plantations of the South, and after slavery, they cooked in the robber barons' dining cars as the Pullmans made their way across the country. And out of the abomination of slavery came the country's most unique and distinctive cuisine, and we were the masters. We have always cooked at our own homes, at other people's homes, at work, and most significantly, at church. Today, there is a kitchen and fellowship hall or dining area at almost every Black church in the nation of every denomination. Food is a part of the spiritual life at Black churches. Those churchyard feasts of yesteryear have simply moved indoors. And so that was just an excerpt, but I'm going to move on to page 35. Pumpkin bread makes 2 loaves. St. Mary's Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C. is not only an historical landmark, but it also represents a landmark in our struggle for equal rights and human dignity. The picturesque late Victorian style structure was designed in the late 1800s by a leading 19th century architect, James Renwick, but the valiant efforts of a group of 28 Black men and women opened its doors. According to church annals, in 1865, the last year of the Civil War, the freed men and women gathered to establish an Episcopal church in Washington, D.C., so Black people could worship without being subjected to the discriminatory rules of the white church. At that time, the church's unwritten rules called for separate pews for Black and white parishioners, no wedding celebrations or funeral services for people of color, and of course, segregated classes for school children. St. Mary's became the first Black Episcopal church in Washington. This historic capsule comes from Thelma R. Campbell, a member of St. Mary's Episcopal Church, which is located on 23rd Street. Mrs. Campbell reports that the beautiful structure with its carved oak furniture, handsome bronze sanctuary railing, patterned tile and marble floor, and expansive altar windows, including one that is paneled in stained glass from the Tiffany studios, has changed little over the past 110 years. She also sends along this message, which shows that our faith and food tradition transcend denominations. Mrs. Campbell says, quote, "Our church has a coffee hour every Sunday during which the parishioners who have a birthday serve food. About 15 years ago, I served this pumpkin bread for my birthday, which was made from a recipe developed by Norma J. Brown, one of our parishioners. It is fun to make and bake, and I always serve it with coffee and cream cheese. The parishioners love it. When I make the bread, our minister, Father Darwin Price, always remarks, 'We stand on the shoulders of others who have gone before.' We thank you, Norma Brown." Norma was 90-something when she went on to glory. Mrs. Campbell sends this recipe, and then the recipe begins. So I hope I haven't gone over time, but thank you.
You're fine. Thank you so much for sharing. Next, it looks like we have, is Ben Blake in the call?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I am.
Hi, Ben. How are
Hi.
you today? I'm going to give you the floor to read your reading.
Okay. Okay. So my reading is the autobiography of Malcolm X. I read this when I was, I think, about 17 in high school back in the early 70s. And this is the original copy. It's all torn up, and I've kept it. It was the most powerful book I read as a youth, and it really changed my life. It really provided me a window into growing up essentially in an all-white neighborhood in small town Newark, Ohio. I really had no idea about the Black experience. And this was a book that was in a syllabus from Worcester College that my sister sent me. So I read this book, and it really changed my life. And it really actually made me a very angry teenager. My mom used to tell me, you'd go for days and you wouldn't say a word to anybody. And the reason that started it was this book and other books like Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, Men in the Pink Triangles, and things that my sister recommended really opened me up. My sister got me this book for Christmas. I think it was basically 1970 or so. And so it really changed my life and made me kind of realize how important aspiring as best you can to be an anti-racist. So I just wanted to read a couple of clips. Oh, I would say that when Alex Haley was doing the tour on the autobiography, he came to my hometown of Newark, Ohio at the OSU branch there. And I'll never forget, he was touring about roots, but I wanted to ask him about the autobiography. And I was so in awe of what he said. I just couldn't, I was a young teenager, kid, and I just couldn't, I couldn't even get my hand up to ask the question. I was just so in awe of what he was saying and talking about. And then later I went to, there's a really amazing documentary called The Autobiography of Malcolm X that came out in the, I think it was in the early 70s. I remember driving to Columbus, and I went to East Columbus. It was all African-American neighborhood. And I got in line. I was the only white person in line. And I felt totally safe. I mean, no one, there was no hassle at all. It was a double bill with Superfly, Black exploitation film. And went into the theater. And I just remember there were some young teenagers, girls there that were just, thought it was so funny that a white boy, came to see the film. And I just felt like the opposite would be a very different experience. So I just got 1 minute. So I wanted to read a couple of quotes. This is about Malcolm X talking to college audiences. Except for all Black audiences, I like the college audiences the best. The college sessions sometimes ran 2 to 4 hours. They often ran overtime. Challenges, queries, and criticisms were fired at me by the usually objective and always alive and searching minds of undergraduate and graduate students and their families. The college sessions never failed to be exhilarating. They never failed to help me to further my own education. I never experienced one college session that didn't show me the ways to improve upon my presentation and defense of Mr. Muhammad's teaching. This is before his break with the Nation of Islam. Sometimes in a panel or debate appearance, I'd find a jam-packed audience to hear me, alone, facing 6 or 8 student and faculty scholars, heads of departments such as sociology, psychology, philosophy, history, and religion, and each of them coming at me in his specialty. At the onset, I'd confront such panels with something such as, gentlemen, I finished the 8th grade in Mason, Michigan. My high school was the Black ghetto of Roxbury, Massachusetts. My college was the streets of Harlem, and my master's was taken in prison. Mr. Muhammad has taught me that I never need to fear any man's intellect. who tries to defend or to justify the white man's criminal record against the non-white man, especially the white man and Black man here in North America. So I think I'm over time, I'm sorry, but if you haven't read the autobiography, I urge you to do so.
Thank you so much for joining us, Ben, and thank you for your little story at the beginning. That was very nice. Let's see. I guess I'm next. This is the next one is the slot that I signed up for. So I'm going to open up something really quick. I wanted to share a nonfiction article that was written by Akweke Emezi, and they are a fantastic Black non-binary artist and fiction writer. They've been in Time Magazine, they've been all over, but they wrote this really great article that discusses their disabilities and the often overlookedness of invisible disabilities. So I'm just gonna read that. It's called "My Spirit Burns Through This Body." It is storming in Dar es Salaam, thundering belting through the sky and rain slamming against the roof over 12 hours until the roads are drowned in swells of water and everyone is stuck in traffic. I am laying under a mosquito net, aged white tulle draped over a 4-poster as the rain seeps under the door to pool on the tile. Kathleen and I catch it with towels and listen to the wind while the right side of my torso goes into convulsions. It starts with my arm jumping, rippling from the shoulder down to my wrist, and then it escalates until I'm watching my fingers flex and claw on their own, watching my elbow slam against my side, flaring my forearm out in spasmodic jerks. My shoulder blade lifts off the mattress, the muscles seizing their own control as my sternum scrambles toward the ceiling. My head snaps so violently to the side that it feels like my neck is being torn by force. I wouldn't let just anyone see me like this, but Kathleen is family. She sits next to me and holds my hand, and I try not to tense my body to stop the convulsions. To control this treacherous flesh. Let it go, she says. And my speech slurs and stutters, and when I try to respond, nerves glitching in my mouth. We get me sitting up against the headboard, and the convulsions seep down into my arm, leaving my head and neck mercifully alone for a bit. Kathleen brings me muscle relaxants and painkillers. I throw the pills down with bottled water, wincing at the taste. We talk about how scary it is. And when I make a joke about popping and locking as my arm carves severe and involuntary shapes into the air, we both laugh because it's better than being afraid. When I was packing for this trip, I didn't bring enough clothes. I was so focused instead on not forgetting any of my medications. I'd sat next to my suitcase with orange bottles scattered around me, 3 different muscle relaxants, 2 different painkillers, 1 for neuropathic pain, my antidepressants, my anti-anxiety meds, my anti-reflux meds that work together with my asthma meds so I can breathe at night, my migraine meds, my inhalers. Seeing them gathered together hurt. 3 years ago, my flesh didn't need all of this, but my stress levels have climbed so high that my muscles have run out of space to hold all of the tension, so they release it in flamboyant spasms. My somatic therapist says this is my body processing complex trauma, and we talk about the ways in which my flesh is desperately trying to keep me alive. I know that my spirit burns through this body with no regard, no respect, no care. I am trying to figure out how to become gentler with myself. I don't want to be as cruel as the rest of the world. Slowly, as I learn to listen to it, I acknowledge that this body is disabled. This is language that makes my spirit pause rather than driving the flesh into ruin. Language that gives me gentleness. Without it, I keep making my body do things it does not have the capacity for. Fueled by rushes of invincibility, possibility waves of analgesic euphoria, I thought this would make me safe. If I could write enough books and make enough money to breathe, and then for the first time in my life, I had a home that I didn't have to leave. But even after stepping away from work, the energy was still there, rabid and hungry. I decorated and redecorated, put in garden boxes and trellises and arbors in the land I am caretaking, mulched and landscaped, and planted into the land was shouting with life. One weekend, I loaded terracotta pavers from the home improvement store in a cart, then into my car, out of my car, and along the pathways of my front yard. It took 50 pavers and 2 trips to the store. Later, when it was too late, I realized that each paver weighed 17 pounds, that I had moved 850 pounds on my own. It was summer, 90 degrees in Louisiana humidity. I worked in the sun until I got dizzy, and then tried to explain to my therapist that I couldn't stop even if I wanted to. My spirit bends worlds and does things that shouldn't be possible, not in the way my flesh or this world is set up. And I'm learning that my body is something to be reckoned with as well. It keeps receipts, and the inevitability claims its debts. I have never been able to drive for weeks, not since a friend came to rescue me from a parking lot because the numbness in my neck had spread into my jaw and throat, compromising my speech, while pain shot up the side of my head in blinding spikes. My journey to Dar was expensive, marked with wheelchairs in every airport, flat seats on the plane, face masks and shields, UV sanitizing lights, disinfecting wipes, exhaustion. It was the first international trip I'd be able to take in 2 years. Ever since the spasming muscles of my neck and shoulders sent me to the emergency room, profoundly changing my relationship with my body and turning, sorry, I'm drinking. And turning me into someone who couldn't accept the new limits of this flesh. I swear I don't want to be cruel. I want to see my flesh as both delicate and resilient, worthy of tenderness and restraint. This disability is invisible in me. Pain clenched in my molars like a tight secret. I've spent years dissociating from it, wiping it into something unreal, but there's too much pain now to keep playing that game. I feel like I've been floating out of my body for ages, and I have to practice actually being inside it. My somatic therapist walks me through exercises to try to recognize the warning signs that precede a convulsion, signs that I've taught myself to ignore until it was too late. I want to learn how to give myself grace, and not just when I've crashed and can no longer move from the pain. It feels like a terrible loss to have to slow down, but so much of my life is sacrifice, and I already know the things I have to destroy, things about how I move and how I work. My 3rd book came out this year. I've completed 4 other books in the last 12 months. I'm editing the manuscript for my 9th book, and I'm impatient to start the next one. The simple truth is that I don't know how to stop, not even when my body breaks down under this pressure. I love my work, these worlds and stories, and all I can think is how frustrating it is to be delayed by flesh that cannot keep up, how much I'm being asked to sacrifice. My agent and I discuss how to manage my future book tours since I've burned out of every single one so far. How to decrease my workload from the start, not just after it's too late and I'm a husk drained of shine and performance. I know I can't write in beast mode anymore, churning out one book after the other at inhuman speed, and the whip of the world bending, wielded by my spirit upon my flesh with casual disregard. The somatic therapist asked me to slow down to a crawl, to trace the sensations in my body, but I still feel myself chafing, boiling with the urge to move again, fast and reckless, inhuman and beyond thought. When your body gives you a little, she warns me, give it more. We meet twice a week so I don't forget what we're working on. The physiotherapist in DAR notes the slight twist in my body, an old injury locked into my left side, the grip of fascia tense by beyond belief. There are deep and ugly knots locked deep in my flesh, scar tissue from traumas I don't remember. Maybe I've been running for so long that stopping feels like death. I am reaching for a languid breath, for a release of all terrible things I've had to hold, for recognition that I am already finally safe. I want to be generous, to spoil myself beyond measure, to understand that my flesh is worthy of extravagance, even as I watch it convulse, dancing without me. The next time my neck seizes and my muscles contract with a shocking violence, I allow it. For once I can see the beauty in having flesh that is as loud as my spirit. It insists on care, and it is just as stubborn as I am, just as brilliant. And I forgive it for being like this, disabled and furiously alive. So that was by Akwege Emezi. I'm gonna definitely share that when we share everything. I hope I didn't go over time too bad. 2 minutes. Okay, good. So next we have Lorraine Woods. Is Lorraine in the call today? Let's take a look. I don't see Lorraine in here. So next after Lorraine is Marcella. I don't see Marcella in here either. I see Jen though. Jen, would you like to read? Hi, Jen. I'm gonna give you the floor.
Hi, everyone. I selected a poem from Maya Angelou to read, and my understanding is that she wrote it for Oprah in 2016. And I will admit that I don't know if it's published in a book or not. I'm reading from a website. So I'm sorry about if I don't really know what the authenticity of this website is, but it's a good poem. So I thought I would read it today. The poem is called Continue. Into a world which needed you. My wish for you is that you continue. Continue to be who and how you are, to astonish a mean world with your acts of kindness. Continue to allow humor to lighten the burden of your tender heart. Continue in a society dark with cruelty, to let the people hear the grandeur of God in the peals of your laughter. Continue to let your eloquence elevate the people to heights they had only imagined. Continue to remind the people that each is as good as the other, and that no one is beneath nor above you. Continue to remember your own young years and look with favor upon the lost and the least and the lonely. Continue to put the mantle of your protection around the bodies of the young and defenseless. Continue to take the hand of the despised and diseased and walk proudly with them in the high street. Some might see you and be encouraged to do likewise. Continue to plant a public kiss of concern on the cheek of the Sikh. To plant a public kiss of concern on the cheek of the sick and the aged and infirm, and count that as a natural action to be expected. Continue to let gratitude be the pillow upon which you kneel to say your nightly prayer, and let faith be the bridge you build to overcome evil and welcome good. Continue to ignore no vision which comes to enlarge your range and increase your spirit. Continue to dare to love deeply and risk everything for the good thing. Continue to float happily in the sea of infinite substance, which set aside riches for you before you had a name. Continue, and by doing so, you and your work will be able to continue eternally. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jen. We're looking for the next participants. I'm not seeing Marcella yet, but Erica, would you like to read? Let's see if Erica's not in the call yet. Is Ben here? Ben, Bradley?
Yeah, I can go.
Sure, thank you so much.
Sure. So I'm gonna read 3 poems. The first one is Frederick Douglass by Robert Hayden. When it is finally ours, this freedom, this liberty, this beautiful and terrible thing, needful to man as air, usable as earth, when it belongs at last to all, when it is truly instinct, brain matter, diastole, systole, reflex action, when it is finally one, when it is more than gaudy mumbo jumbo of politicians, this man, this Douglass, this former slave, this Negro beaten to his knees, exiled, visioning a world where none is lonely, none hunted, alien, this man, superb in love and logic, this man shall be remembered. Oh, not with statues, rhetoric, not with legends and poems and wreaths of bronze alone, but with the lives grown out of his life, the lives fleshing his dream of the beautiful, needful thing. The second poem I wanted to read is The Sermon on the Warpland by Gwendolyn Brooks. And several strengths from drowsiness campaigned, but spoke in single sermon on the warpland, and went about the warpland saying, no, my people, black and black, revile the river, say that the river turns, and turn the river. Say that our something in double pod contains seeds for the coming hell and health together. Prepare to meet, sisters and brothers, the brash and terrible weather, the pains, the bruising, the collapse of bestials, idols. But then, oh then, the stuffing of the hulls, the seasoning of the perilously sweet, the health, the heralding of the clear obscure. Build now your church, my brothers, sisters. Build never with brick or corten, nor with granite. Build with lithe love, with love like lion's eyes, with love like morning rise, with love like black, our black. luminously indiscreet, complete, continuous. And I wanted to finish with Theme for English B by Langston Hughes. The instructor said, "Go home and write a page tonight, and let that page come out of you. Then it will be true." I wonder if it's that simple. I am 22, colored, born in Winston-Salem. I went to school there, then Durham, then here to this college on the hill above Harlem. I am the only colored student in my class. The steps from the hill lead down into Harlem to a park. Then I cross St. Nicholas, 8th Avenue, 7th, and I come to the Y, the Harlem Branch Y, where I take the elevator up to my room, sit down, and write this page. It's not easy to know what is true for you or me at 22, my age, but I guess I'm what I feel and see and hear. Harlem, I hear you. Hear you, hear me, we too. You, me, talk on this page. I hear New York too. Me, who? Well, I like to eat, sleep, drink, and be in love. I like to work, read, learn, and understand life. I like a pipe for a Christmas present or records. Bessie, Bop, or Bach. I guess being colored doesn't make me not like the same things other folks like who are other races. So will my page be colored that I write? Being me, it will not be white, but it will be a part of you, instructor. You are white, yet a part of me as I am a part of you. That's American. Sometimes perhaps you don't want to be a part of me, nor do I often want to be a part of you, but we are, that's true. As I learned from you, I guess you learned from me, although you're older and white and somewhat more free. This is my page for English B. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Erica, did you want to read? Is that?
Yes, I was going to read two poems. Thank you, Antonia.
No problem.
I was going to read two poems by Maya Angelou. The first being Life Doesn't Frighten Me, and the second being Still I Rise. The first one, life doesn't frighten me. Shadows on the wall, noises down the hall. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Bad dogs barking loud, big ghosts in a cloud. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Mean old mother goose. Sorry, lost my spot. Sorry, guys, technical difficulty. Give me 1 second. I'm going back.
I did the same thing earlier, don't worry.
Mean old mother goose, lions on the loose, they don't frighten me at all. Dragons, breathing flames on my counterpane, that doesn't frighten me at all. I go boo, make them shoo, I make fun, way they run. I won't cry, they don't fly. I just smile, they go wild. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Tough guys fight all alone at night. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Panthers in the park, strangers in the dark. No, they don't frighten me at all. That new classroom where boys all pull my hair, kissy little girls with their hair in curls, they don't frighten me at all. Don't show me frogs and snakes and listen for my scream. If I'm afraid at all, it's only in my dreams. I've got a magic charm that I keep up my sleeve. I can walk the ocean floor and never have to breathe. Life doesn't frighten me at all. Not at all, not at all. Life doesn't frighten me at all. And the second poem is Still I Rise. That's a classic, and I love to hear it read. You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise. Does my sassiness upset you? Why are you beset with gloom? 'Cause I walk like I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still I'll rise. Did you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard, 'cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my backyard. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still like air I rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise as I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide, leaving behind my nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's miraculously clear, I rise, bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Erica. The Still I Rise is one of my favorite poems like ever written. I have it in my office, just like printed out on my desk. It's so good. And next we have Marcella from the STEM Library. If you want to turn on your camera and your microphone, you can have the floor.
Hi, won't let me turn on my video. It says the host has stopped it.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, I did earlier when you came in to not interrupt. So just give me 1 second. More technical difficulties. Can you do it now, maybe?
Yes.
There you go.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm going to be reading a portion from an academic article by Lars Eckstein called Sound Matters, Post-Colonial Critique for a Viral Age. I'll be reading the introduction. In Toni Morrison's masterpiece, Beloved, there is one passage in particular which summons with a poetic clarity the vitality of sound for any conception of the Black diaspora. In a pivotal moment towards the end of the novel, a group of 30 Black women assemble in front of the Bluestone Road, 124 to drive out the mysterious child woman, Beloved, a character whose identity remains ambiguous throughout the text, yet whose manifestation is unquestioningly tied to the collective traumata of the Middle Passage and plantation slavery. Here is how Morrison frames the exorcism of Beloved. In the beginning, there were no words. In the beginning, there was sound, and they all knew what that sound sounded like. The voices of women searched for the right combination, the key, the code, the sound that broke the back of words, building voice upon voice upon voice until they found it. And when they did, it was a wave of sound wide enough to sound the deep water and knock the pods off chestnut trees. The first thing to observe here is that Morrison places her narrative universe firmly beyond the logocentric view of the world. She consciously echoes the scene of linguistic constructivism in John 1.1, quote, in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God, unquote. Only to deny that indeed the word was first. For the women in front of Bluestone Road 124, at least, the beginning lies in a common heritage of sound. What reads like a metaphysical meditation of the first glance is, in fact, a very mundane reflection on the historical conditions of the Black diaspora. For the women in Morrison's novel, the legacy of language was crucially and brutally interrupted by the middle passage. The linguistic system and their dispersal, therefore, is indeed secondary. It is a system overwhelmingly imposed by them and by the colonizer. And while it is for them a mother tongue, it is at the same time in Paul Klein's famous aporia, the murderer's tongue. The power of language here of the English language is thus highly contested and ambivalent to any diasporic context and closely tied to questions of accommodation and appropriation across the colonial difference. In Morrison's memorable and poetic phrasing, the colonizer's tongue can only be functional. Therefore, when indeed the colonial, quote, back of words, unquote, is broken, and it is here that the sound crucially matters. Other than the denotive aspect of words, sound, that is the qualities of timbre and pitch, of rhythm and prosody, yet also of the communal, ritual, antiphonic organization of performance, did survive the middle passage, albeit undergoing the multiple translations of creolization. It is in sound, therefore, that a fragmented sense of continuity with the past, along with the multiple routes of the Atlantic, may be retraced, and that a scene of local rootedness can be negotiated to envision a diasporic future. The core message of Beloved revolves around the notion that only in the sonic and polyphonic performance of words, the death of slavery, here evoked by the deep waters of the Atlantic southern trees, whose strange fruit Billie Holiday so powerfully lamented, can be confronted and ultimately overcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcella. Let's see. So it looks like we have a little bit of a gap right now until for 15 minutes. I do have Anika, I still have a few poems I could read that I picked out if you want me to fill some time.
See if Aaron was going to read. I wasn't sure if he was.
Oh yeah, I think he said he was going to go get a book. He's working right now, so I think
okay.
Let's see.
Oh yeah, that pesky thing work. Okay,
yeah,
no worries.
He's in today.
I've got.
Oh yeah, you have more of your book.
Well, I have another one. I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. I mean, Patricia Hill Collins, Black feminist theorist. I'm bringing her up today, especially because she taught for so long at University of Maryland in the sociology department. So that kind of brings it, local, so that we can uplift one of our own. So I wanted to kind of start with an excerpt from the introduction from Patricia Hill Collins' book, Intersectionality as Critical Social Theory. I think it's really important that we have a conversation of intersectionality, which is when you have different levels of oppression that are imposed on people due to their identities, be that gender identity, racial identity, sexual identity. Sometimes people like myself take up space in multiple marginalized groups. So as I am at the intersection of being a Black female, and there we have a couple of intersecting oppression as far as those groups are concerned. So to give you a little bit of background of what intersectionality is and why it's important. I also want to kind of give a little shout out also to Netflix, and they've got a master class with a lot of, let's see here, it's called Black History, Freedom and Love, and some really great thinkers are in that special as well, and they talk a little bit about intersectionality and to take it the conversation a bit further. But since I've got a moment, I will get to reading. Introduction. Intersectionality came of age in the 20th century during a period of immense social change. Anti-colonial struggles in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, the emergence of a global women's movement, civil rights movements in multicultural democracies, the end of the Cold War, and the defeat of apartheid in South Africa all signaled the end of long-standing forms of domination. It was clear that deeply entrenched social inequities would not disappear overnight, nor would the social problems that they engendered. What was different was a new way of looking at social inequities and possibilities for social change. Seeing the social problems caused by colonialism, racism, sexism, and nationalism as interconnected provided a new vantage on the possibilities of social change. Many people came to hope for something better, imagining new possibilities for their own lives and those of others. Intersectionality draws from and carries this legacy. What were once diffuse ideas of the interconnectedness of people, social problems, and ideas are now central to intersectionality as a recognized form of critical inquiry and praxis. Yet, as intersectionality has matured, both it and the world around it have changed. Decolonization has morphed into neocolonialism. Feminism confronts a deeply entrenched misogyny. Civil rights flounders on the shoals of a colorblind racism. Cold War thinking persists in proxy forms in undeclared wars, and racial apartheid has reformulated both within and across national borders. Social inequity seems as durable as ever. Within these social conditions, new social programs complement long-standing ones from the past. Change seems to be everywhere, yet not in the way that intersectionality's initial advocates imagined it would unfold. Democratic institutions that once offered such promise for realizing ideals of freedom, social justice, equality, and human rights are increasingly hollowed out from within by leaders who seem more committed to holding on to power than to serving the people. Such big ideas seem less relevant now, quaint notions that were useful during past centuries, but perhaps less attainable now. Given the scope and durability of social inequity, and social inequality, and the social problems that it engenders, it's hard not to become disillusioned. How do people engage in social action during times of such change as our own? Conversely, which ideas prove to be most useful in shaping such actions? This brings to me why I wrote this particular book and why I decided to finish it now. I see important parallels between the challenges that confronted intellectual activists who initially contributed to the intersectionality's emergence and those of today. In Intersectionality as Critical Social Theory, I take the position that intersectionality is far broader than what most people, including many of its practitioners, imagine it to be. We have yet to fully understand the potential of the constellation of ideas that fall under the umbrella term intersectionality as a tool for social change. As a discourse, intersectionality bundles together ideas from disparate places, times, and perspectives, enabling people to share points of view that formerly were forbidden, outlawed, or simply obscured. Yet because ideas in and out of themselves do not foster social change, intersectionality is not just a set of ideas. Instead, because they inform social action, intersectionality's ideas have consequences in a social world. Intersectionality is well on its way to becoming a critical social theory that can address contemporary social problems and the social changes needed to solve them. But it can only do so if its practitioners simultaneously understand and cultivate intersectionality as critical social theory, a form of critical inquiry and practice. Intersectionality is not yet realized its potential as a critical social theory, nor has it adequately democratized its own processes for producing knowledge. But the foundation is there. Intersectionality possesses a knowledge base, a series of ongoing questions, a mass of engaged, interdisciplinary practitioners, and traditions of praxis that collectively inform its theoretical possibilities. Intersectionality is posed to develop an independent theoretical space that might guide its ongoing questions and concern. Yet, without serious self-reflection, intersectionality could easily become just another social theory that implicitly holds up the status quo. If practitioners do not pursue intersectionality's critical theoretical possibilities, it could just become another form of, as my friend put it, academic bullshit that joins an arsenal of projects whose progressive and radical potential has waned. It could become just another idea that came and went. Critical social theory sits in a sweet spot between critical analysis and social action, with theories that can cultivate the strongest links between two, proving to be the most resilient and useful. Developing intersectionality as critical social theory involves two challenges. On the one hand, time is right to look within the parameters of intersectionality with an eye toward clarifying its critical theoretical possibilities. And on the other hand, time may be running out for the advancing intersectionality as critical social theory in the academy. If intersectionality does not clarify its own critical theoretical project, others will do so for it. And that was a nice excerpt from the introduction. And I know that there's more out there for more reading going to happen, but I just wanted to kind of uplift that because, as we see a lot of discussion and about intersectionality, critical race theory, critical social theory, all these different ways of thinking, ways of attacking the oppression that a lot of marginalized people face. And so that is where we want to take where Patricia Hill Collins takes the conversation, and where we're seeing a lot of political activity about it as well. So
I know Erin is here to read next.
Excellent. Pass it on.
Yep, floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'm going to read a small excerpt from a book that I actually got while I was an undergraduate student. A little known Black history activist by the name of Theodore Roosevelt Mason Howard, T.R.M. Howard. Well, there we go. Wait, there we go. Yeah. So the book is entitled Black Maverick. So just a little bit before I read, Howard was considered to be a controversial figure in his time. He had a myriad of jobs, if you will. He was a farmer as well as a medical doctor, got his training as a medical doctor, and was also a civil rights activist. One of the little known things that people know about Howard was involved with the Emmett Till case that happened in Mississippi, where he was living at the time. And he became notarized more so for his, I would say the best way I would put it is that as many people would be familiar with the nonviolence movement of the civil rights portion of the nonviolence portion of the civil rights movements, Howard was not one who prescribed to that theory, and he created a lot of enemies So the excerpt that I'm going to read actually talks about an instance where he had some strong words for, at the time, the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, J. Edgar Hoover. So I'll read from there. Let's see, his initial clashes. It started because of a speech in Chicago to the Alpha Phi Alpha fraternity in late December. Howard alleged that the confidential information usually leaks from local FBI offices and witnesses in Negro slayings are subjected to pressures as a result. Others, most notably Adam Clayton Powell Jr., had made similar claims, but no one was more relentless than Howard. He followed up the Chicago appearance by leveling 2 more blasts at the FBI in successive speeches in Baton Rouge and New York. He repeated his charge that the FBI can pick up pieces of a fallen airplane on the slopes of the Colorado Mountain and find the man who caused the crash, but they cannot find a white man when he kills a Negro in the South. This was too much for Louis B. Nichols and his boss, J. Edgar Hoover. After Nichols read an FBI report warning that Howard's unfounded allegations concerning the FBI received considerable publicity and undoubtedly influences a number of Negroes in their feelings towards the FBI, he pressured Hoover to write directly to Howard. Nichols' goal was to discredit Howard publicly as a phony through a media barrage. The plan was to send the letter through regular mail on the evening of January 16th and release it to the press, whether or not Howard had received it on the morning of January 18th. Hoover's letter berated Howard for making, quote, intermittent and baseless claims that were a disservice to the common decency. Much of it was standard FBI boilerplate. He reminded Howard that the FBI was not a policy-making organization and acted on orders of the criminal division of the Department of Justice. Because of the restraints imposed by existing legislation, it was doing what it could. The FBI's fair and prompt investigations, Howard boasted, were had greatly elevated the public consciousness of civil rights. Howard had conveniently forgotten the work of this bureau, which was largely responsible for the virtual elimination of lynching in the South and was also mainly responsible for the breaking up of the Ku Klux Klan in the Carolinas and Georgia. Hoover was indignant about the accusations that Native agents were guilty of leaks. If Howard had personal knowledge, he was obligated to submit evidence as you have to sustain your irresponsible charge, or that you issue a public retraction. Hoover's letter caught Howard, then in Los Angeles, by surprise. He first heard about it when the reporters called him on the 18th of January. It did not arrive to his Mound Bayou address until the next day. Nevertheless, Howard immediately fired back a response letter. He pounced on Hoover's declaration that the FBI was responsible for the virtual elimination of lynching in the South. He pointed out that, if true, this contradicted Hoover's excuse that lack of enabling legislation tied the FBI's hands. Howard found it hard to understand how the FBI was able to take effective action to virtually eliminate lynching in light of your statement that the Department of Justice can act only when the federal statutes have been violated. Howard suggested that it was not the FBI that brought down the claim and stemmed lynching, but rather persistent action by the NAACP and by an aroused public opinion. Moreover, if the FBI has successfully quashed lynching, why it so clearly failed to bring justice to killers of George W. Lee, Lamar Smith, and Emmett Till? Instead of berating critics, Howard urged Hoover to use the prestige of his office to condemn some of these murders. So that's just a small excerpt from the book. It's a very powerful book that I would truly recommend anybody if they get a chance to read. I've enjoyed reading this portion of it, but there's other things, especially some of the aspects of what occurred in the trial with Emmett Till and his actions that he took place in that trial. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Aaron. So we're coming towards the end of our live stream, which has been nearly 3 hours. So thank you to both Aaron and Anika, especially for helping us, for hosting this. This has been amazing. So I have a couple of poems I would like to read, and then Anika is going to close us out with some closing words. Does that sound good to you guys? Cool. All right. So I have 2 poems. The first one I'm going to read is by Sonia Sanchez. It's called This Is Not a Small Voice. And you can find it on the poetryfoundation.org, which is a nonprofit that has all this awesome poetry. So, this is not a small voice you hear. This is a large voice coming out of these cities. This is the voice of Latanya, Khadijah, Shaniqua. This is the voice of Antoine, Daryl, Shaquille, running over waters, navigating the hallways of our schools, spilling out on the corners of our cities, and no epitaphs spill out of their river mouths. This is not a small love you hear. This is a large love, a passion for kissing, learning on its face. This is a love that crowns the feet with hands, that nourishes, conceives, feels like the water sails, mends the children, folds them inside our history, where they toast more than the flesh, where they suck the bones of the alphabet and spit out closed vowels. This is a love colored with iron and lace. This is a love initialed Black genius. This is not a small voice you hear. And the other one is a poem by Quincy Troop that I really like because in it, they mentioned Brooklyn, and my family is from Brooklyn. And this is called the West Indian Day Parade. If you want to jump up inside energy, cross over from Manhattan to Brooklyn in September. Every year on Labor Day, the West Indian Day Carnival Parade jumps down Eastern Parkway full of color, music, and pizzazz. Watch people, hold on one second. Sorry. Watch people waving flags of Caribbean nations, Barbados, Trinidad, Tobago, St. Lucia, Haiti, Antigua, Dominica, Jamaica, St. Kitts. From behind police barricades, food scents draw us in, tantalize the memory of nostrils for an instant. The desire to return to homelands focuses the need to vibrate the street with the rhythms, causes bodies to shake as if possessed by spirits. We watch gorgeous women agitate their bodies, their stomachs rippling like airborne ribbons on incoming sea waves. Watch the ooh la la up and down movement of hot and not basketball bottoms, hips and pelvises humping coast to coast in primeval frenzy. as bands on floats pulsate native music thumping inside their own rhythmic memory. 4 million revelers strong, they jump up, jump down, from 11 to dusk. People from all races gawk at Caribbean black. People of all shades, decked out in fabulous costumes of gold, pink, blue, white, green, fuchsia, orange, black, purple, brown, breasts firm as grapefruits burst from skimpy bikini cups, as revelers sport headdresses full of Indian feathers. Women and men splashed with sequins, gold dust, wearing spectacular beads, gold and silver shoes, headscarves and bandanas. Some mimicking terrorist disguises that cover their faces up to their eyes. A fashion statement? You go figure. Jump up, jump down, jump up, jump around. The phalanxes of policemen make their presence known, wear bored expressions on their faces. Why do they look so bored? With all of this energy going on? As the parade sashays down Eastern Parkway, crowds scream for their native floats, for the music they love, rooted in their memories. As cross-fertilized food odors play succulent games with nostrils. East Indian, African, European, and Asian flavors. Mix ingredients, chefs stir into mouth-watering melenges. Drive stomachs crazy with desire, cause hunger to raise up its head as the body does in dance. Escovitch, pawpaw, and mango jam, curried goat, kayalu, pepper pot, sauce timalis, rice and peas, biryani, fritters, rice and beads, pulori, boudin, Creole, akra, jerk chicken, souse, langouse grille, stomp and go, sancochu, mango chutney, aki and saltfish, pork roasts, calyps, and meat patties. As the parade winds down and energy revs up, as the police lose control of the crowds, bursting at the seams, spilling over the boundaries, people throw themselves out into the street to jump up as the music boils. The men in blue throw up their hands. Some are even seen to shuffle their feet in time, with rhythmic in sync with the flow, because nothing is going to happen but a good time for all. And what's wrong with that? In this age of children being shot and blown up and missiles and death everywhere we look. What's wrong with jumping up, jumping down for a day? What's wrong with watching people have a great time? Their faces bright as the dazzling sun on this day. What is wrong with that? And with that all being said, I'm gonna throw it to Anika to have some closing words for us. Yeah, thank you for listening.
Thank you, Antonia. I am actually really hungry now that you just listed out.
Me
all that
too.
food,
Oh my God. I want to go get
because,
some biryani. I'm not gonna lie. Like
I am West Indian, and I'm like, oh yes, I would like some all the food. You're just, I was like,
I would love to go to
fatty
that
cocoa
parade in
bread.
Brooklyn.
Oh man, they have it, or they used to have it in DC as well.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, it's a smaller scale, but
yeah,
maybe when outside, opens up a little bit more, we get some warmer weather.
Yeah,
we'll see if Carnival comes back. That's one of my bucket list things to
definitely
do all over the world. But I just want to thank everyone. Thank you, Antonia and Aaron. You did a fabulous job hosting. I've been kind of flitting in and flitting out as the summertime host. Summertime I'm in and summertime I'm not. But thank you all very much. Your enthusiasm and enjoyment of this event is still palpable. I can still feel that you all have shared some really meaningful, powerful work. And And I just, it just really underscores the theme of today's read-a-thon was Black authenticity, and we have had it all. We've had the just being able to keep things on the move, not having anything scripted really, but still keeping things moving without a hiccup here, a technical difficulty there, and we keep moving. We've discussed today stories of culture, food, music, dance, card games, and reunions, and family, structural racism, and how that has really shaped how people live and see and operate in this world as we endure the trauma of oppression, but still keep pressing forward. As Nicole Hannah-Jones talks about in the 1619 Project, talking about like keep holding America to the promise that it made, to its own words. And we, Black people have gone on record as saying we believe it, for ourselves. And we have, I can't remember the author, but they talk about how African Americans have been on this road from property to personhood and being able to fully live in that. And so what is more authentic than that? And I think that all of the art and writings and that we've shared today have really kind of brought all of that to the forefront. And it's really an amazing way to bring in or keep the spirit of Black History Month going, because it is about the history of the past as well as the history that we're making right now. And these histories are definitely steeped in conversation and keeping things moving forward orally, because that is how African culture used to keep the stories moving forward, and how we do not forget, and how we do not let things happen again, and how we keep things relevant. And so, and also, I'm sorry, I read too much. I'm in grad school, so y'all forgive me. I'll just go on site and go to different theories and who said what. I will spare you all of that and close it out. Aaron, did you want to share anything? Because I'm happy. I'm ready to drop the mic. I'm
drop the mic.
Drop the mic. We can.
I do want to mention
out. Like I remember he did. I remember that he's like Obama out. I thought
I do want to mention that we had almost 100 people drop in today to look in our live stream on YouTube. So if you are still around, make sure you press that like button. And again, follow us on social media. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at UMD Libraries. And thank you so much to everybody. Over and out.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks again.
Everyone.
We'll see y'all next year.
Yes, next year for the 4th.